Rental battle, a clash of strategy and will. A rental battle, a true test of a trainer's adaptability. Unlike regular battles where trainers use their own Pokémon, rental battles force them to command borrowed Pokémon. A challenge in itself, as they must work with unfamiliar abilities, movesets, and personalities. Success in these battles hinges on quick thinking and strategic prowess. It's no wonder that rental battles are widely recognized in the Pokémon world. From the battle factory and battle tower to the battle tent, they are common battlegrounds for testing one's skills. In Pokémon Adventures, Emerald Chapter, the Frontier Brain Greta was famed for her mastery over rental battles, boasting an incredible 100-win streak. Even Pokémon Rangers operate on a similar principle, commanding wild Pokémon instead of their own partners. Johan's preparation and Skarmory's resolve. Skarmory. Type Steel Flying. Ability Keen Eye. Moves known: Wing Attack / Steel Wing, Payback, Drill Peck, Metal Sound, Spikes, Pluck, Stealth Rock, Whirlwind, Substitute, Roost, Taunt, Iron Defense, Protect, Toxic. Mood: excited, anxious. Will this strategy really work? Condition: excellent, battle ready. Friendship: 50, we bathe together after all. Johan examined the data before him. Steven's Skarmory, a well-trained Pokémon packed with a wide arsenal of moves. The sheer variety was a testament to Steven's deep pockets and dedication. Many of the moves Johan had integrated into his strategy were already mastered, making Skarmory the perfect candidate for his plan. Of course, his bond with Skarmory couldn't compare to Steven's. Then again, Lance's bond with Aerodactyl wasn't exactly flawless either. And unlike Skarmory, Aerodactyl had just suffered a loss. Even though it had been healed, it hadn't received proper treatment at a Pokémon Center. Not to mention, Skarmory had a clear type advantage. Johan smirked. The advantage is mine. The spectators, Steven's amusement and Ghastly's dilemma. Meanwhile, Steven and his Metagross had taken Johan's previous spot on the bench. Without an ounce of shame, Steven reached into Ghastly's popcorn bucket, grabbed a handful and popped them into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. Why does this popcorn taste like sunflower seeds? He muttered. Caca. Stare. Ghastly glared at him, clearly displeased. But since Steven was Johan's student, it decided to forgive him. Definitely not because Metagross was watching. Steven glanced at Johan, who was now stepping onto the battlefield. With a raised finger, Johan made his intent clear. I'm only going to demonstrate this once. Steven's casual demeanor shifted instantly. He had always suspected that Johan's strength wasn't what he displayed on the surface. The more he interacted with him, the more convinced he became. And when Johan handed him that Skarmory strategy manual, confirmed his suspicions. Just how deep do you hide your strength, Johan? On the battlefield, Lance had finished studying Aerodactyl. His usual confidence remained, but his excitement was palpable. Anyone who received Drake's praise wasn't to be underestimated. Johan may have been using a borrowed Pokémon, but if he was still willing to take on Lance, it meant he was fully confident in his strategy. And that made Lance thrilled. He loved battling strong opponents. Ka! Skarmory flapped its wings, eyes sharp and ready. Johan ran a hand along its metallic feathers. Don't worry, he murmured. If we lose, it's my fault. If we win, it's all thanks to you. No pressure, just give it your best. Ka! Skarmory's respect for Johan soared. The battle begins, strategy versus strength. Begin! Steven's signal, Johan and Lance locked eyes. Aerodactyl, Stone Edge, Lance ordered, sweeping his cape dramatically aside. Instead of Dragon Dance, he went for a direct attack this time. Johan's lips curled slightly. Trying to switch things up, huh? No matter what you do. Skarmory, block with Stealth Rock. As Aerodactyl flapped its wings, jagged stones surged forward. At the same time, Skarmory's eyes glowed, summoning its own floating stones. Boom! Two rock-based attacks collided in midair, neutralizing most of the attack before the remaining shards pelted Skarmory. Use iron defense. With a gleam of steel, Skarmory folded its wings protectively, reinforcing its already incredible defense. Lance frowned. This wasn't a normal battle. Johan wasn't just reacting to his moves, he was dictating the pace. Aerodactyl, Thunder Fong. Toxic. Electricity crackled as Aerodactyl lunged, sinking its fangs into Skarmory's body. Biff. Skarmory shuddered, taking the damage, but in exchange Aerodactyl had been poisoned. Lance's expression darkened. The longer this battle dragged on, the worse it would get for him. Aerodactyl, Fire Fong. Johan's voice was calm. Substitute. Boom. Aerodactyl's flames incinerated a decoy, leaving Skarmory untouched. Lance's heart sank. Poison's effects were already creeping in. He had to finish this now. Aerodactyl, Supersonic. Johan's eyes flashed. Taunt. Steven's jaw dropped. Did Johan just read Lance's move? Aerodactyl's attempt to confuse Skarmory was interrupted, its eyes turning red with frustration. Lance, however, wasn't easily shaken. Dragon Breath. Protect. A shimmering green barrier flickered into existence, blocking the attack completely. Ghastly peeked through its fingers. Is this the infamous Protect Toxic Substitute combo? Steven, too, was in awe. Johan wasn't just fighting, he was teaching a lesson. Lance gritted his teeth. Fire Fong. Roost. Silence. Steven and Ghastly stared in disbelief. Did he really just stall and heal at the same time? Aerodactyl's fangs clamped down, but Skarmory's reinforced defenses shrugged off the damage. Ghastly's eyes sparkled. That's so dirty, so underhanded, so beautiful. Poison tightened its grip on Aerodactyl. Its movements became sluggish. Johan sighed. Let's not drag this out. His eyes sharpened. Skarmory, brave bird. Boom. A blue streak of light shot through the battlefield. Aerodactyl collapsed. The battle was over. Johan had won, but not just by brute force. He had completely controlled the match from start to finish. Steven exhaled. He didn't just open the door to new strategies, he kicked it off its hinges. For some reason, despite losing, Lance looked almost relieved. An unforgettable lesson. We lost. Lance accepted the outcome with surprising grace, recalling Aerodactyl to its Pokeball. His mind replayed the battle, analyzing every exchange, every strategy. But the more he thought about it, the chill in his spine deepened. He quickly decided he was better off reviewing his battle against Steven. Replaying the one against Johan felt too unsettling. One thing was certain, every single one of his Pokémon needed to learn Taunt. Immediately. There was no other way to counter Johan's suffocating control. No wonder Drake speaks so highly of him. Lance muttered to himself. Even gym leaders would struggle to execute the kind of tactical precision Johan displayed, and he wasn't even using his own Pokémon. That was the scariest part. He had no prior bond with Skarmory. He didn't know its quirks, its preferred attack rhythms, or how well it had mastered its moves. And yet, Johan had flawlessly adapted, leading Skarmory with the kind of instinct only truly great trainers possessed. Lance glanced at Ghastly, floating excitedly beside Johan. To him, Ghastly was the only thing holding Johan back. But at the same time, Ghastly was also Johan's biggest strength. Still, Lance muttered under his breath, Viridian power faintly tingling within him. Johan's future potential was hard to predict. But at the very least, he's already at an Elite Four level. A rivalry rekindled. Steven's eyes gleamed. That was incredible. He had always taken Johan's strategic suggestions seriously, but his habits had prevented him from fully embracing them. Yet today's battle. It felt like Johan was directly telling him, Steven, this is how Skarmory should fight. And in that moment something clicked. Steven had always loved Pokémon battles. But when victory came too easily, the thrill faded over time. That was why he had chosen to focus on Devon Corporation. It was an unfamiliar challenge, something he actually had to struggle to master. But today, he met Lance. More importantly, he witnessed Johan's brilliance firsthand. There were talented trainers his age, and Johan was proof of that. If Johan can excel in so many areas, strategy, psychology, research, then why can't I? Johan's three-pronged strategy had succeeded, just not in the way he expected. Because now, Steven had a new target, a rival who could truly push him forward. Ghastly's awakening. Caw. Ghastly's eyes sparkled like stars. So this was the protect-toxic substitute combo. It already knew toxic and substitute. All it needed now was protect. And once it mastered that move, under Johan's guidance, it would be unstoppable. Kicking out champions? Crushing Elite Four members? Totally possible. Johan, meanwhile, extended a hand towards Skarmory. Well done. Skarmory hesitated, flustered, before lightly tapping his hand with its wing and returning to Steven. Johan blinked. Is it blushing? Then he winced, rubbing his sore hand. That tap hurt. So, Skarmory's a female. Acknowledgement from Lance. Johan, Lance approached, his expression softer now, extending his hand. Your command was exceptional. You've shown me your true strength. I look forward to facing you in a real battle someday. Johan sighed and shook Lance's hand, lightly this time. Don't hold your breath. But I have a feeling I won't have to wait too long. Lance's gaze flickered toward Ghastly, who was brimming with excitement. It longs for that moment when you two will astonish the world. Johan pressed his lips together. As long as I can afford to astonish the world. Token of gratitude. Oh, right, about Aerodactyl. Lance finally remembered why this battle even happened in the first place. Johan gave a casual shrug. It should be fine. Skarmory's thorough stimulation did the trick. Lance coughed awkwardly. The fact that it didn't lose control at the end means its goal is clear now. Johan nodded. Still, just to be safe, I'll record a relaxation hypnosis audio clip for you. Play it every day for Aerodactyl to reinforce its mental stability. Thanks. Johan waved him off. It's nothing. Since I took on the task, I might as well do it properly. After all, Aerodactyl's condition wasn't too severe. A mix of physical treatment and psychological reinforcement would do the job. Oh, one more thing. Lance rummaged through his belongings before pulling out a pendant in the shape of a dragon's claw. Didn't really prepare a gift, so take this. Sharp Fong, it's my token of gratitude. Sharp Fong, a held item that increases the chance of making an opponent flinch. Johan's eyes widened. This was perfect for Ghastly. I really shouldn't. He had already taken it. Lance smirked. The Terror Handbook was the treatment fee. This is a courtesy gift. Different things. Johan shrugged, slipping the pendant into his pocket. Steven's contribution. Speaking of gifts, Steven walked over, smiling. Teacher, I should thank you for today's lesson too. Johan raised an eyebrow. Steven grinned. Last time, I accidentally bought an extra Protect TM. Caca. Before Johan could react, Ghastly's tongue shot out and snatched it. Protect. Johan sighed. You guys really don't have to. We're all friends here, Steven said simply. Consider it a token of appreciation. Johan exhaled. Your thoughts alone are enough. But he still kept the TM. The road ahead. The trio exchanged battle insights for a while longer before parting ways. High above the Hoenn region, a Charizard's wings beat steadily, carrying Lance back to Kanto. He tapped his communicator. Yes, Drake. Everything's settled. His gaze flickered. Johan is skilled. Incredibly skilled. After hanging up, his communicator buzzed again. Seeing the caller ID, Lance smiled. Winona. Meanwhile, back at the Devon estate. Skarmory, let's refine our strategy, Stephen said, rolling up his sleeves. Watching from a distance, Joseph Stone smiled, cast form floating beside him. It's been a long time since I've seen Stephen this passionate about battles. Johan had visited once, and Stephen had already rediscovered his spark. Maybe it's time to give Johan a raise? Joseph chuckled. Woo? Cast form twirled in agreement. And help register him for the next tournament. As Johan returned home, Ghastly floated behind him, absolutely beaming. Keep it low-key, Johan muttered. Humility, whether human or ghost, is important. Beep, beep. A message appeared on his phone. He eats cabbage. Time for relaxation. Grain in the field. On my way. Ghastly blinked. Superficial things? You're the one checking messages right after that speech.
Hey, everyone. If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
Kaka. Is she asleep? Ghastly, clinging to the ceiling with the Protect TM, saw Johan come in from the balcony and asked. Yeah, Johan nodded. He had an odd feeling. For some reason, it seemed like this Evie Eats Cabbage was even more enthusiastic about hypnotherapy than Phoeba was. But it didn't matter. In the end, it was all to help Phoeba. And besides, the payment had been quite generous. How's Protect coming along? Easy to learn? Johan asked with a smile as he watched the serious-looking Ghastly after finishing up his nightly routine. Ghastly, self-proclaimed as exceptionally gifted, seemed quite confident. However, mastering Protect wasn't the same as learning Substitute. Kaka. Course, it's a piece of cake. Ghastly stuck out its tongue, its eyes flashing with a hint of nervousness, but it still gave a firm response. Johan didn't want to crush Ghastly's confidence, so he simply smiled and turned to his own tasks. Relieved, Ghastly let out a breath. Close call. But then it steeled its gaze, determined. It had to master Protect, or else its genius reputation would crumble. Floating down to the desk, Ghastly carefully opened a metal tin, trying to be as quiet as possible so Johan wouldn't notice. Inside the box were 2 types of poke blocks left over from the special training in Lawbridge Town, orange and red. Which one was for boosting special attack? Whatever. Both together would be even better. Ghastly gulped and its tongue darted out. Swallowed all the remaining poke blocks at once. Hiss. The intense heat and bitterness exploded in its mouth, nearly making it breathe fire. Ghastly. I regret everything. But the jolt from the poke block's spicy, bitter flavors definitely made it more alert. Meanwhile, Johan was sitting at his desk, flipping through Agatha's Terror Handbook. The more he read, the more cold sweat began to drip down his forehead. Toxic Orb, Black Sludge, Spell Tag, Cursed Amulet, Trevenant's Root, Yamask's Mask. All these items combined would cost tens of millions of poke dollars, easy. Not to mention the regular expenses and move training costs. To raise just one Jengar, Agatha must have spent at least 50 million. Johan glanced at the red-faced, panting Ghastly. Is this really a Pokémon? This is a gold-eating monster. Kaka. Ghastly noticed Johan's stare. They locked eyes for a moment before both looked away in a panic. He didn't see me sneak those poke blocks, right? This manual can't fall into Ghastly's hands. Late at night. In the velvet sky above, a flawless full moon shone with quiet brilliance. Every so often, a few Zubat flew by the window, hunting the last mosquitoes of autumn. Johan let out a long yawn, eyes tearing up from fatigue. It had been a long time since he'd stayed up this late reading. He had to admit, Agatha's terror handbook was immensely insightful. Gave him clear guidance on how to train Ghastly and a solid plan for its eventual evolution. Ghastly, aren't you tired yet? Closing the terror handbook, Johan turned to look at Ghastly. The sight made him jump. Ghastly's eyes were bloodshot, its lips dry, its tongue lolling, and even its dark aura seemed to be fading. It looked utterly exhausted, as if it had been drained 8 or 9 times over. Caca. Nothing to it, piece of cake. Did you actually master it? Johan asked, astonished. Caca. Of course. Absolutely not. It was so hard. Tears welled up in its eyes. Ghastly. Johan sighed in relief. He was really worried Ghastly would master Protect so quickly, and then he'd have to buy another TM. Don't worry, we've got plenty of time. There's no rush, Johan said reassuringly. Caca. I can only get halfway. Halfway. Johan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Caca. Ghastly's expression changed, and it concentrated. Black mist swirled around it, and a faint green shield appeared, but it only covered half of Ghastly's body. Still, getting halfway meant the full move couldn't be far off. Caca. Seeing Johan's stunned expression, Ghastly waved its tongue in front of him. Slurp. When Johan didn't respond, Ghastly licked his face. The shock snapped Johan out of it. Seeing Ghastly's puzzled expression, he pulled out a sherry berry and took a bite. It's nothing. Just suddenly remembered something important. Feigning nonchalance, Johan took out his phone. As luck would have it, there were actually messages waiting for him. If he eats cabbage, someone barged into my house late at night, talking about some new strategy and woke me up. Now I'm wide awake and can't sleep. What should I do? Someone challenged her at this hour? Johan winced. That person was either an idiot or had serious issues. Seeing the message was from just a few minutes ago, Johan started typing a response. But before he could hit send, another message came in. If he eats cabbage, the moon is so full tonight. Attached was a photo. First glance, it was a beautiful full moon, its pale light illuminating a patch of grass and a lone tree. The scene was quite serene. But on closer inspection, cold sweat trickled down Johan's back. There was a figure hanging from the branches, seemingly in black jeans with what looked like a red afro, and beneath the tree lay a fainted houndoom. What the... He hesitated, then typed a response. This client paid well and would be essential to raising Ghastly. Grain in the field. So do you need a relaxation session? Johan sighed internally. How did a Pokémon Psychologist end up becoming a sleep therapist? Evie eats cabbage. Can I get a subscription? Monthly? Or maybe yearly? Johan? Johan cleared his throat awkwardly. Ghastly, don't wander off. I need to make a call. With that, he headed to the balcony. Caw. Ghastly watched him leave, eyes misty with emotion. Working so late just to raise me. I need to try even harder. Bathed in moonlight, Johan dialed a voice call. Hello. The voice on the other end sounded lazy. But before Johan could say anything, something below caught his eye. He saw a shadowy figure hurrying across the courtyard, chased by a Golbat and 2 Zubat. The bats swooped down, occasionally attacking the dark shape. Golbat chasing a Mook? What is this, a Pokémon soap opera? Hello? The voice from the phone asked again. Hold on a second, Johan muttered, then called into the apartment. Ghastly! Caca! Ghastly floated out immediately, curiosity on its face. Johan gestured downwards and said, Help it out! Mook might be a bit of a mess, but it wasn't known for harming people. Plus, Johan had fed it poke blocks before. Just then, a painful howl came from the shadowy figure. Wait, that wasn't Mook's voice. Ghastly didn't need any further prompting. It darted down from the balcony in a flash. Johan stuffed his phone into his pocket and ran out of the apartment. Following the sounds, he finally found Ghastly in a narrow alley, standing protectively in front of a filthy, mud-splattered creature. Ghastly was staring down the Golbat and two Zubat. Johan approached the creature covered in garbage, noticing a trail of red that stood out starkly against the ground. "Oh!" A weak whimper reached his ears. Getting closer, despite the awful smell, Johan moved briskly. He saw 6 tails matted together with sticky sludge. "Caw-caw!" Seeing Ghastly and Johan dare to block its way, Golbat got angry, letting out a furious cry. At its command, the two Zubat instantly opened their mouths wide, unleashing supersonic. "Caw-caw!" Ghastly cackled, and the black mist around its body began to swirl. A portion of the mist detached from Ghastly, forming a dense cloud between itself and the sound waves. The supersonic vibrations passed harmlessly between the 2 wisps of fog, failing to disrupt Ghastly at all. In the next moment, Golbat saw 2 grinning Ghastlys in front of it. "Ghastly, make it quick! It's badly injured and needs to get to the Pokémon Center immediately." "Caw-caw!" Ghastly responded with a determined nod. Meanwhile, crouched on the ground, Johan ignored the filthy state of the small creature, trying to press his hand over its wound. Blood oozed between his fingers. "Ooh!" The little creature whimpered and struggled, clearly resisting Johan's touch. Johan softened his voice. "I'm not a bad person." The words seemed to trigger something in the little Pokémon, and its struggles intensified. As it thrashed, its wound reopened and blood pooled on the ground. It let out a trembling, frightened growl, baring its tiny fangs in an attempt to look fierce. In the moonlight, its crystal blue eyes, resembling polished gemstones, reflected fear and Johan's gentle smile. The sight overlapped with something in its memory, leaving it confused. But it also recalled a night when someone had given it the best meal it had ever tasted. The little Pokémon's struggles eased just slightly. Johan saw the hesitation in the Vulpix's eyes and felt a weight settle in his heart. Another Pokémon hurt and abandoned by humans. Vulpix wasn't an uncommon species, and given its cuteness, it was highly sought after, second only to Pokémon like Eevee and Piku. Many owners kept Vulpix as a domestic pet. But some more superstitious people feared it. Because of ancient legends about the 9-tailed fox, some people viewed Vulpix and Ninetales as sinister creatures. Judging by this little one's temperament, it hadn't been a very suitable pet to begin with. Johan thought of a certain patient he once had. Someone who wanted to build an ideal society, a mathematical magician. To a degree, Johan could understand his ideals. "Caw-caw!" Ghastly floated over, having already dealt with the 2 Zubat. Golbat lay unconscious on the ground, minus a couple of teeth. Johan didn't fuss over the missing teeth and instead gave a quick command to Ghastly, "Put it to sleep with hypnosis." Johan's own hypnotic techniques required cooperation or catching the subject off guard. But this Vulpix was on high alert and injured, so Ghastly's direct approach was necessary. "Caw-caw!" Ghastly nodded, its eyes glowing with the blue light of hypnosis. "Oh!" Vulpix tried to resist, but Ghastly's hypnosis quickly overcame its defenses. After a few weak attempts, the little creature fell into a deep sleep. Johan sighed. He took off his jacket and wrapped the dirty little Pokémon in it before picking it up. "So much lighter than I expected. Let's go." He hailed a taxi and headed straight to the Pokémon Center. The Rustboro Pokémon Center, Johan sat on a bench outside the emergency room, frowning as he waited. "Caw-caw, caw-caw." Ghastly floated back and forth, looking more anxious than Johan. "Calm down, Ghastly. We're at the Pokémon Center, it should be fine now," Johan tried to reassure it. "Caw-caw. Do you have enough money?" Johan blinked in surprise. "You're worried about the money. It's enough, don't worry." "Not enough?" came a gentle voice from Johan's pants pocket. "Huh?" Johan took out his phone, realizing that he had only locked the screen earlier and hadn't actually hung up. He lifted the phone to his ear, sighing. Hey ma'am." just as he was about to say something. Your account has been credited with 200,000 poke dollars. Current balance, 235,000 poke dollars. Has anyone ever told you that your voice sounds like a Lapra's? Johan said, his tone suddenly overly sweet. Caca. Ghastly watched Johan's abrupt shift in expression, cold sweat dripping down its face. It felt like it had just witnessed something it shouldn't have. The voice on the other end chuckled softly before asking, "Is that enough? If not, I can wake up my uncle." No, it's enough, Johan said, smiling into the phone while glaring at Ghastly. Click. The emergency room door opened and Nurse Joy emerged, pushing a cart covered in a white sheet. Caca! Ghastly gasped in horror. A white sheet? Did it die? Johan rolled his eyes. Relax, it's just sleeping on top of the sheet. Sure enough, Ghastly saw the pristine white-furred creature lying peacefully on the soft white blanket, its 6 translucent, fluffy tails draped around it, breathing steadily. Caca! Ghastly's eyes widened in disbelief. Is this the same little black ball from earlier? It was hard to reconcile the snowy Vulpix in front of it with the dirty, matted creature it had rescued. To be fair, Johan was just as astonished as Ghastly. He had known it was a Vulpix, but he hadn't expected it to be an Alolan Vulpix. Or rather, an Ice-type Vulpix from Alola. How did an Alolan Vulpix end up in Hoenn? And in such a dire condition, no less. Mr. Johan, the little one is stable now, but it's severely malnourished and has lost a lot of blood. It's very weak, so it'll need proper care and nourishment. Nurse Joy knew Johan by name since he often assisted the Rustboro Police Department in calming down rampaging Pokémon, and she frequently helped with these cases. Thank you. Johan then went to settle the bill. To his surprise, he learned that although he wasn't a registered trainer, because of his consistent support of the League's Investigation Bureau and the Rustboro Police Department, he had long been granted free access to Pokémon Center services. That saved quite a bit of money. On the taxi ride home, Johan held the slumbering Alolan Vulpix in his arms. It looked like a delicate porcelain doll, its face serene as it slept. You must have been through a lot. The Vulpix instinctively snuggled deeper into Johan's arms, its nose twitching as if dreaming of something. Caca, caca. Ghastly watched the little creature, licking its lips. An Alolan Vulpix. Ha. Back home, Johan carefully laid the Alolan Vulpix on his bed, managing to find a leaf-patterned blanket from who knows where. Don't scare her, she's a girl, he reminded Ghastly, who was hovering nearby, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Caca. Ghastly looked puzzled. How do you know that? Of course, Johan had already confirmed it earlier. But he didn't bother explaining, heading out to the balcony with his phone. Meanwhile, Ghastly positioned itself protectively beside the sleeping Vulpix. If Johan hadn't forbidden it, it would have licked her at least 100 times by now. Still awake? On the balcony, moonlight poured down, casting a gentle, bright glow. Yeah, came the quiet, sleepy murmur from the other end of the line. It seemed like she had already drifted off to sleep. Johan decided to put off returning the treatment fee for now. Returning inside, he found Ghastly already dozing off beside the Vulpix, its mouth open, snoring lightly and occasionally mumbling caca in its sleep. An Alolan Vulpix. Meanwhile, in a distant bedroom, golden-haired Cynthia was curled up among a pile of adorable plush dolls. Moonlight filtered through the window, enveloping her in a soft, ethereal glow as she slept, a peaceful smile on her face. Kindness should always be met with kindness. The next morning, caca. Johan was startled awake by Ghastly's panicked cries. He opened his sleepy eyes to see Ghastly darting around the room like a headless chicken. Waking up without being numbed by a lick feels almost strange, Johan muttered, his hand instinctively reaching to his bedside table for a sherry berry. What's wrong? Did you lose your learning machine? He asked. Caca. Ghastly responded, calling out anxiously. The little fox is gone. Huh? Johan suddenly remembered the new addition to their home, a Pokémon. He glanced towards the foot of the bed, but there was no sign of the Alolan Vulpix. "Don't panic," he reassured Ghastly. "We're on the 6th floor, it's not like it jumped out of a window. The door's locked, so it's got to be somewhere in the apartment." With that, Johan hurried out of bed and began searching the apartment alongside Ghastly. Caw. Luckily, Ghastly's ability to phase through walls and furniture paid off. Finally found the little Vulpix huddled under the corner of a wardrobe. The Vulpix had curled up tightly against the wall, hiding its head beneath its fluffy tail, with only 2 crystal blue eyes peeking out. Seeing Johan crouch down to peer at it and Ghastly's mischievous grin, the Vulpix let out a warning growl. "Ooh!" The little Pokémon bared its 2 tiny fangs, growling at them in a low, defensive tone. Adorably fierce. Caw. Ghastly's eyes sparkled with delight. So cute. Johan, however, felt a weight settle in his chest. The Alolan Vulpix's wariness is even worse than I thought. It likely had a lot to do with whatever it had been through. After considering for a moment, Johan grabbed a handful of poke blocks, crouched down, and extended his hand into the wardrobe's shadows. Even as a Pokémon psychologist, gaining the trust of a hurt Pokémon still required basic communication and interaction. And without the Vulpix using any abilities or moves, he couldn't read its Pokédex entry to learn more about it. As the Vulpix sniffed the aroma of the poke blocks, its blue eyes flicked warily between Johan and the offered food. "Go on, eat," Johan said with a gentle smile. "You lost a lot of blood yesterday and you're still very weak. Eat something to get your strength back." Caw. Ghastly encouraged the Vulpix as well, swallowing its own saliva. "Poke blocks are so delicious. There's no way you can resist." The Alolan Vulpix stared at the poke blocks for a moment. Whap! Suddenly, it swatted Johan's hand away with its paw, scattering the blocks across the floor. Hiss! Johan winced, 3 scratch marks appearing on his hand as fresh blood welled up from the wounds. The Vulpix's eyes briefly showed a flash of guilt and distress before its expression hardened again. Caw. Ghastly hurriedly picked up each poke block with great care, blowing on them gently as if trying to make them less dirty. Its eyes held a confused glint. "This makes no sense. Poke blocks are so tasty." Ghastly couldn't help but compare this moment to its own recruitment. Johan had only needed a single cup of instant ramen to win it over. The Vulpix's blue eyes watched Ghastly's movements through the narrow gap beneath the wardrobe. Johan leaned against the side of the wardrobe and slowly sat down, ignoring the pain from his scratches. He was long used to minor injuries thanks to Ghastly's antics, and this was no different. "I remember," he began, almost talking to himself. "I once had a friend a lot like you. He ended up all alone in a foreign place, a new city, a new school. He was afraid to get close to anyone and couldn't afford to fall behind in his studies. He loved Pokémon but didn't dare raise one. He had no time, no energy, and no money. So he chose to study Pokémon psychology because he thought the hearts of Pokémon were simpler than people's. To others, the original Johan seemed impressive. He entered Silver Academy with the highest theory scores in all of the Hoenn region. He even graduated early after finishing the coursework well ahead of schedule, only a few years older than Steven and the others. But no one knew how much he had sacrificed to achieve those grades and how much time he had given up. Caw. Ghastly, who had returned to Johan's side without him noticing, was listening intently, its expression complicated. It was the first time it had ever heard Johan share this story. Hearing about someone else's struggles, even when spoken of calmly, could always bring to mind one's own experiences. "Ooh!" A soft whimper came from beneath the wardrobe. Johan and Ghastly exchanged a look, sharing a smile. This time, Johan didn't crouch down. Instead, he placed the poke blocks on a small dish and gently slid it under the wardrobe. "Here, have something to eat," he offered. "When you've recovered, if you want to go home, I'll take you back to Alola." but if you want to stay. Before he could finish speaking, Johan felt a cold, soft tongue lick the wound on his hand. The sensation was icy and gentle. Caw. We're back. Before Johan had even opened the door, Ghastly phased through it and eagerly searched the apartment for the Alolan Vulpix. Caught a glimpse of the little white Pokémon scampering away. Looks like she's regained some energy, Johan observed as he walked in, carrying a bag. After a day of gentle reassurance, the Alolan Vulpix had become less fearful of Johan and Ghastly. Considering her weakened state, Johan had taken Ghastly out shopping at the department store that evening. Returning home, Johan saw Ghastly waiting by the wardrobe once more. It was clear where the Vulpix had hidden again. Johan sighed inwardly. Pokémon may have simple hearts, but they were still intelligent creatures capable of thought. In some ways, their hearts were both resilient and fragile. Resilient in how they could silently endure for countless years, keeping promises. Fragile in how betrayal or abandonment could leave gaping wounds that might never heal. Vulpix, I bought you a gift, Johan said, sitting beside the wardrobe. Would you like to see it? He pulled 3 light blue bows from his pocket. Hoo-woo. The Alolan Vulpix poked her head out from under the wardrobe, eyeing the bows with bright, twinkling eyes. Can I put one on you? Johan asked gently. Ooh. The Vulpix hesitated, then pulled her head back under the wardrobe. Caw. Ghastly drooped its head, disappointed. Johan gave Ghastly a reassuring smile. Then, in a sudden blur of white, the Vulpix darted out from under the wardrobe and leaped straight into Johan's arms. Thump. The force of the jump knocked Johan flat on his back. The Vulpix burrowed deep into Johan's embrace, her small body trembling slightly. It seemed like she had made a big decision, and was feeling afraid and uncertain about it. Sensing the Vulpix's nervousness, Johan smiled softly and gently cradled her in his arms. He didn't say anything, just stroked her back slowly. For a long while, the Vulpix finally began to calm down. All right, let's get these on, Johan said, holding up the bows. He tied one around her neck and placed the other 2 on her ears. All done. Take a look. Johan held up a mirror. Hoo-woo. The Alolan Vulpix lifted her head hesitantly, her cheeks turning slightly pink. Caw. Ghastly let out an excited howl, its tone almost wolf-like. They look great. I must have a good eye, Johan praised, smiling. The Vulpix's blush deepened, and she shyly lowered her head. Then, as if making another big decision, the little Pokémon leaned forward, gently licking Johan's cheek with her cool tongue. Caw. Me too. Ghastly floated over, cackling gleefully, and stuck out its red tongue to lick Johan's other cheek. Slurp. One side of Johan's face began to frost over, while the other started to go numb. Johan's mouth twitched. Oddly, not too bad. To this point, it seemed like everything was going perfectly. However, Ghastly was so excited that its tongue stretched out too far, splashing saliva onto one of Vulpix's new bows. Stare. In an instant, the Alolan Vulpix's entire demeanor changed. Her eyes glowed with a faint blue light. Caca. Sigma, LLL. Wham! Ghastly was sent flying, crashing hard against the wall. Cold sweat dripped down its face. Psychic. Johan's pupils contracted. He glanced at Ghastly, now plastered against the wall. Then he looked down at the Alolan Vulpix, who was blushing furiously and looking unsure of what had just happened. It seems she isn't fully aware of her abilities. Vulpix. Type Ice. Ability, Snow Warning. Moves known: Tail Whip, Powder Snow, Disable, Ice Shard, Grudge, Icy Wind, Confuse Ray, Hex, Aurora Beam, Psychic, Hypnosis, Baby Doll Eyes. Mood: Happy, Hesitant. I'm a harbinger of misfortune. Condition: Weak, it needs supplements. Supplements. Affection level: 70, it acknowledges you, but that's not enough. When the Alolan Vulpix used Psychic, Johan was finally able to see its Pokédex entry. Simply judging by the list of moves, it was clear that this Vulpix had learned almost as many moves as Ghastly. However, the moves' colors on the screen appeared quite dull, indicating a lack of proficiency. In fact, like the psychic from earlier, the Alolan Vulpix likely wasn't even aware it could use the move. This might have been because it used to live with its group, learning moves but rarely needing to battle on its own. In reality, Alolan Vulpix are communal Pokémon, with their groups often protected by an older Ninetales. Through all, in the snowy mountains of Alola, Alolan Vulpix is a primary target for Weevil. And judging by Vulpix's reaction earlier, could this little one, despite its cute appearance, actually be a hidden bundle of fury? Johan couldn't help but feel a pang of worry for his small household. Still, he smiled and pulled out a luxury ball as he spoke. Vulpix? Before he could finish, the Vulpix curiously tapped the button on the luxury ball with its paw. A flash of red light. Click! There wasn't even a hint of struggle. The luxury ball settled with an almost anticlimactic stillness. Ah, well, Johan sighed dramatically. I wanted at least a little excitement. Caw. Ghastly floated back, its demeanor a little shaken. Did we get tricked by its cute and weak appearance? Johan shot Ghastly a sidelong glance. Who was the one going so cute and he just a moment ago? Ghastly chuckled sheepishly. Well, it is cute. She probably doesn't even realize her own strength, Johan mused as he held the luxury ball in his hand. From now on, let's live together. The luxury ball shook slightly in response. Ghastly grinned broadly, delighted to finally have a partner to spar with. Come to think of it, the Alolan Vulpix shared quite a few moves with Ghastly, like Confuse Ray and Hex. Thinking about it, Johan murmured as he thoughtfully rubbed the ball in his hand. A centuries-old ghost and a fox spirit. Sounds like a setup for a mystical duo. That night, Ghastly enthusiastically showed the young Vulpix around the apartment. Caw. This is the kitchen. Johan doesn't let me in here, but between you and me, Ghastly lowered its voice conspiratorially. You can sneak in sometimes. Ghastly puffed up with pride. Hoo. The Alolan Vulpix blinked its eyes. Why would you want to go in? Caw. To secretly inhale gas, of course. I've got a technique. As long as you don't take too much at once, Johan won't notice. Hoo. Ghastly then led the young Vulpix to another room. Caw. This is the bathroom where you can take baths. Ghastly flashed a mischievous grin. Together, hee. Oh. Startled, the Vulpix's latent psychic power surged. Caw. Elsewhere, Johan received an unexpected phone call. Lance, is there still something wrong with Aerodactyl? From the other end of the line came Lance's somewhat awkward voice. Ahem, no, Aerodactyl's fine. Especially after listening to your hypnotic audio reinforcement. Johan, well, there's a new issue. It's not really an issue, just... Johan frowned. Lance, since when did you get so hesitant? This doesn't seem like you. Well, all right, the problem is me. The video of our battle got uploaded online, Lance admitted. Huh. Johan stood up from his chair. The body cam wasn't turned off. The video was automatically streamed to the control room. Normally, it wouldn't be an issue since nobody watches those unless we're on a mission. But as luck would have it, Agatha happened to see it. And she said, this is what a battle should look like. This is tactical synergy at its finest. So, Johan silently picked up his phone and logged into the official league site. Sure enough, the video was on the homepage, recorded from Lance's perspective. The title read, Dirty? Skillful? Don't use such words when talking about tactics. It had already accumulated over 100,000 views and was rising by the second. There were plenty of comments below. Burning Leaf, tried it myself. Yep, it's dirty. Strong. Maybe I just wasn't skilled enough or my opponent was too strong, but I lost. till it gave me new insights into battle strategies. Masked Man, is this an evolution of the toxic stall strategy? Factory Head, rental battle? Such coordination with borrowed Pokémon is rare. And many, many more. Johan rubbed his forehead. He could already feel the ripples this video would create. His research paper's popularity seemed to be picking up traction again. More importantly, his online consultation room had received a sudden surge of new patients. He had been so preoccupied with helping the Alolan Vulpix all day that he hadn't paid attention to his phone. "I'm really sorry, Johan," Lance said. "I only found out today. But Agatha said all revenue from the video would go to you, and she's willing to send you a rare item or a move learning machine as compensation." Lance continued. "Of course, if you think this has negatively impacted you, I can contact them to take the video down right away." Ahem. Johan cleared his throat as he glanced at the new balance in his bank account. "You know, Lance, this video is more impactful on you," Johan pointed out. After all, this practically meant he was gaining fame at the expense of the renowned dragon tamer. "Wins and losses are part of life. This battle taught me a lot. Everything else is secondary," Lance replied, laughing. Johan was slightly taken aback by his easygoing attitude. "Besides, my face isn't even in the video." Johan blinked, dumbfounded. Since the camera was mounted on Lance's shoulder, it was true that his face wasn't in the footage. Of course, anyone determined enough could figure it out, but Lance's words seemed meant to ease Johan's concerns. "It's a joke. Anyway, what do you want to do?" "It's your call," Lance said. After mulling it over for a moment, Johan sighed. "Leave it," he said. The battle had been for treating Aerodactyl, and there was no need to keep it under wraps. Besides, several of the gardeners and staff at the Stone Estate had witnessed the match anyway. And as far as gaining fame went, Johan figured it was inevitable. Why else would he have published that research paper? Plus, with so many people seeking his consultation, he'd be able to help more people and Pokémon. Might even bring in a bit of extra income. And it would give him more material for his research. He glanced over at Ghastly and Vulpix, who were now playing together. With an extra Pokémon to care for, his expenses were only going to increase. After hanging up the call, Johan turned his attention to the messages in his consultation inbox. Most of the simpler queries were answered quickly. A few more complex ones remained. For example, "Psychic Girl, why won't my Kadabra evolve?" In the game, evolving Kadabra into Alakazam is similar to evolving Haunter into Gengar, as both require a trait evolution. Back before the introduction of the Link Cable item, evolving Pokémon like Haunter into its final form was a hurdle single-player fans struggled to overcome. However, the situation is slightly different in the Pokémon world. That's because trading essentially replicates the special magnetic fields found in the wild, which are necessary to stimulate certain Pokémon to complete their evolution. This explains why wild Alakazam, Gengar, and Golem are seen in the wild. To be honest, questions like these shouldn't be directed at someone like Johan, a Pokémon psychologist. Although not widely known, this is general knowledge. Till after some thought, Johan decided to respond. "Grain in the field, you could try using the Link Cable item or attempt trade evolution." The response came faster than expected. "Psychic Girl, if that worked, why would I be asking you?" "Johan." To be honest, this was the first time he had encountered someone with such a short temper. "Birds of every feather, huh?" Johan patted his cheeks to snap himself out of his keyboard warrior mindset. He had a hunch that the person on the other end had quite a bad temper. If he butted heads with her, things could easily escalate into a doctor-patient dispute. However, her words did make him think more deeply. Typically, Pokémon like Kadabra or Haunter evolve immediately through the use of a link cable or trade evolution methods. But from what she was saying, it seemed like she had already tried those methods without success. Since this world's reality can't follow game mechanics to the letter. "Grain in the field. Can you describe Kadabra's current state or tell me what it usually does?" Psychic girl, what else can it do? Eye roll emoji, it just meditates, spaces out, and meditates again. Grain in the field, what about its eating and sleeping habits? Psychic girl, do psychic Pokemon need to sleep? Do you even know what you're talking about? Johan. Taking a deep breath, Johan forced a smile. Grain in the field. Well, I think you should try asking Kadabra what it wants. Even though it's a psychic type, it's not a machine. It has its own thoughts, routines, and preferences. Can't just be stuck meditating all the time. Grain in the field. Try adding some color to its life. He wanted to add more, but noticed that the user had gone offline. Caca. Ghastly seemed to notice Johan's mood, floating over curiously. It's nothing, Johan replied, waving it off with a smile. Caca. Ghastly grinned and floated away to find Alolan Vulpix to play with. So, it's that whole psychic superiority complex thing, huh? Johan thought darkly. Maybe Mewtwo should give them all a reality check. Dangerous thoughts flickered in his eyes as he headed for the bathroom. After splashing his face with cold water, Johan stared at his reflection in the mirror. My emotions are all over the place. Seems that taking in Vulpix has put an invisible strain on me. This kind of mental state wasn't acceptable for a Pokémon psychologist and trainer. Not only could it impact himself, but it could also affect his Pokémon. Luckily, he realized it in time. Kanto Region, Saffron City. As the most prosperous city in Kanto, Saffron is home to the Pokémon world's corporate giant Sylph Company as well as 2 powerful gyms. Deep within the psychic-type gym lies a room cluttered with a multitude of plushies, some shaped like people and others resembling various Pokémon. Seated among these plushies is a girl in her late teens wearing a form-fitting red outfit and long straight hair. She is Sabrina, the psychic-type gym leader. Standing before her is her Kadabra. Kadabra, do you need sleep? Sabrina asked flatly, pressing a hand to her forehead. Before Kadabra could answer, Sabrina's eyes began to glow with an eerie blue light. In sync, Kadabra's eyes reflected the same blue glow. With a slight shake of Sabrina's head, Kadabra awkwardly mirrored her movement. Seeing this, Sabrina smiled softly and murmured, "See? Psychic Pokémon don't need to sleep." When the blue light in Sabrina's eyes faded, Kadabra returned to normal. A flicker of resistance crossed its eyes but quickly vanished. Still, Sabrina tilted her head slightly, as if reconsidering. It couldn't hurt to try, right? Kadabra blinked, a hint of surprise showing in its gaze as it glanced at Sabrina. Adjusting his mindset, Johan exited the bathroom and spotted Ghastly and Alolan Vulpix seemingly getting along, laughing together. Yet, the more he listened, the more something felt off. He saw Ghastly lead Alolan Vulpix to a large mirror. Caw. Let me tell you something. In our family, the most important skill is hypnosis. Hoo-woo. Vulpix tilted its head, not fully understanding, but nodded earnestly. Pleased, Ghastly nodded back. Caw. Next is transformation. Huh? Johan, pouring himself a glass of water, listened curiously. Ghastly's first lesson seemed reasonable enough. As the Pokémon of a psychologist, mastering hypnosis wasn't a bad idea. Alolan Vulpix had already learned hypnosis, and judging by the strength of its psychic, it seemed to have considerable psychic abilities to build on. But what was this about transformation? Johan watched as Ghastly's black fog began to shift and change, its appearance morphing. Caw. Now I'm Ghastly Bell. Ooh. Alolan Vulpix's eyes sparkled with admiration. Ghastly smirked, the black fog shifting again under Vulpix's expectant gaze. Caw. Now I'm Ghostina. Pfft. Johan nearly spat out his water. Ooh. Vulpix gazed in wonder, its expression more admiring than ever. Ghastly is amazing. To be fair, ever since Ghastly learned Substitute, its shape-shifting abilities had indeed improved. Caw. Ghastly couldn't stop grinning. It decided to keep pushing its elder sibling advantage. Caw. And after that, the most important thing is scaring people, attacking from behind. Johan quickly put down his glass and picked up the soft and squishy Alolan Vulpix. It's time for bed. If he let Ghastly keep teaching, he feared the young Vulpix might pick up some very questionable habits. Ooh, being suddenly scooped up, Alolan Vulpix blushed slightly, letting out a low whimper before burying its head into Johan's chest. Johan couldn't resist reaching out and running his fingers through the fluffy fur on its head, a contented smile spreading across his face. The stress he'd been feeling slowly melted away. Turns out nothing relieves stress better than petting a cat, or rather, an Alolan Vulpix. So soft and cool to the touch. This is the good stuff. Ooh, Vulpix purred softly, making a sound similar to a cat's purr. Ooh, caw. Seeing Alolan Vulpix being whisked away mid-lesson, Ghastly was stunned. It hurriedly floated after them. Wait, I haven't finished teaching yet. Whether Vulpix wants to grow stronger, train, or battle, that's up to her, Johan's voice called back. Ghastly nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Then it paused. Wait a minute, didn't I already teach that lesson? Ghastly, turn off the lights. Click. Relieved that Johan hadn't caught on, Ghastly happily floated towards the bed. Caw. I'm coming too. But after the lights went out, neither Johan nor Ghastly noticed. In the large mirror they had been standing in front of earlier, a pair of crimson eyes blinked open, filled with confusion. Where's the login failure? Caw. Ghastly floated inside, casually opening the door for Johan, who had just reached the door with keys in hand. Johan felt a bit awkward. Johan's eyebrow twitched. Ghastly, next time, wait until the door's open before going inside. Caw. Ghastly turned around with a puzzled look. Why? Johan took a deep breath. Didn't you see the notice? There are warnings about burglars in the neighborhood. People see you phasing through doors and unlocking them, we might get mistaken for thieves. Caw. Sigma, LLL. Seeing Ghastly's shocked expression, Johan nodded in satisfaction and closed the door. Understand now? Caw. As Johan walked away, Ghastly's eyes sparkled. It really was like that. Ghastly hadn't noticed it before. But now, Hoo. Hearing the commotion, Alolan Vulpix peeked cautiously around the doorframe. Upon seeing Johan and Ghastly, her eyes lit up. She happily darted towards Johan. Ooh. Wait, Vulpix. Thud. Before Johan could finish, Alolan Vulpix had pounced on him, licking his face affectionately. Wiping the frost off his face, Johan shot an annoyed glance at Ghastly, who was laughing heartily nearby. He picked up the little one and set her down. Despite Alolan Vulpix's small size, with her fluffy fur making her appear not much bigger than a kitten, her strength was no joke. She had no problem knocking over an adult like Johan with ease. However, what surprised Johan the most was Vulpix's psychic power. It was completely unexpected for an Ice-type Pokémon. Like right now. As he tried to stand up, he felt himself being lifted by a gentle but firm psychic force. Is she really an Ice-type Pokémon? Or is this Psyduck reincarnated? But you're recovering well, Johan noted. This was the third day since he had taken an Alolan Vulpix, and in the Pokédex information he could see, her status had improved from weak to good. There's a fireworks show tonight. Let's get ready and we'll head out soon, Johan said, patting her soft fur. Ooh. Hearing this, Alolan Vulpix hesitated and backed away a few steps, showing signs of anxiety and fear in her eyes. This was her current state. Besides being unaware of her own strength and possibly having a hidden violent streak, she was also incredibly shy and lacked confidence. Don't worry, we'll go together, Johan reassured her gently. Ooh. With Johan's calming words, the little one eventually agreed and turned to start packing up with Ghastly. Johan hadn't pried too deeply into Vulpix's past. For one, the pain of revisiting those memories might be too much. It had taken a lot for her to start opening up, and there was no need to risk reopening old wounds. Additionally, Johan had been in touch with Officer Jenny at the Rustboro Police Department to inquire about any illegal trades involving Alolan Pokémon. If results came from there, Vulpix wouldn't have to recall her own trauma. Still, he had managed to learn from indirect questioning that Vulpix had indeed been abandoned. However, she had never been officially captured. It seemed like whoever had taken her in had intended to keep her as a pet. In Johan's eyes, Vulpix's past was important, but if he had to choose, her future mattered more. If she remained stuck in the past, she'd never take that first step forward. She needed to take that first step. Half an hour later, the streets of Rustboro were bustling, with Alolan Vulpix perched on Johan's head, gripping his hair tightly. "Vulpix, if you keep holding on like this, I'm going to end up bald." "Oh." Realizing her mistake, Vulpix quickly loosened her grip and blew on Johan's scalp as if to soothe it. CRCR crack. A thin layer of frost formed. Johan. He wondered if, aside from chesto berries and pecha berries, he should start carrying some Aspir berries. Aspir berry cures freezing or frostbite. Caca. In contrast to Vulpix, Ghastly was much more carefree. Especially since it had somehow dug out a big red bough from home and tied it around its head. Ghastly proudly called it a Vulpix matching style. If Johan hadn't stopped him, Ghastly would have already been showing it off to strangers, asking if they liked his new look. One was a social butterfly, the other was socially anxious. Quite the pair. "Uncle, that Vulpix is so cute." "Why is it white?" asked a little girl around 8 or 9 years old, holding a Jigglypuff plushie. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Uncle?" "Oh." Alolan Vulpix trembled and dug her claws into Johan's hair again, burying her head. Hiss. Johan took a sharp breath, forcing a smile. "See, call me Big Brother." "Okay, Uncle." "Is that really a Vulpix?" The little girl tilted her head cutely. Just then, Ghastly appeared out of nowhere and made a goofy face, sticking out its tongue. "Caca." For a moment, the little girl froze, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh no, oh no." Johan quickly grabbed Ghastly and ran, spotting the girl's parents nearby. After a short jog, they arrived at the Riverside Park, the venue for the fireworks show. A cheerful crowd had already gathered, chatting and laughing. Johan found a quiet patch of grass off to the side to sit on, with Vulpix and Ghastly beside him. "Caca." Ghastly pouted. "Why'd you pull me away? Didn't you see that girl found me so cute she wanted to cry?" Johan's brow furrowed. "Yeah, cute to death." "Vulpix. Hoo. Didn't you notice? Along the way, a lot of people were complimenting you, saying you were cute and beautiful." "Hoo. Really? If you just lift your head and stand tall, you'll find that you're much more popular than you think." Johan gently set Vulpix down on the grass. He touched his hair. Good grief. It was rock solid. But now wasn't the time to worry about that. He patted Vulpix's head softly and said, "Take a step forward. Learn from Ghastly." Turning to look, he saw Ghastly had wandered over to a lovey-dovey couple, making exaggerated faces and showing off its big red bow. The startled couple took off running. Johan. Don't learn from Ghastly. Just be yourself. Take a step forward and maybe you'll see a whole new view." "Oh." Encouraged by Johan's words, Vulpix steeled herself and closed her eyes tightly. Plip plip. She took a few hesitant steps forward. Boom. Suddenly, a dazzling firework lit up the night sky. The night was illuminated, as if scattered with stars. Startled, Vulpix instinctively opened her eyes and saw the brilliant display of fireworks. Colors painted the sky, reflecting on her pure white fur and lighting up her crystal-clear eyes. "Ooh, so beautiful." Johan gently picked her up, with Ghastly floating back beside him. The three of them sat on the grass, watching the bright flowers in the sky bloom and unconsciously smiling. Make a wish on the fireworks. Supposed to be really lucky, Johan said. Caca. Hoo. Really? Ghastly and Vulpix exchanged a look. Caca. Ghastly cackled. My wish? To help Johan and little Vulpix conquer champions and dominate elites. Ooh. Vulpix blinked softly, smiling to herself. Ghastly says Johan's destined to become an amazing trainer. I want to keep up. They both turned to look at Johan. Well, me? The world's so big, I just want to take you both to see it. Johan laughed. Boom. A golden Pikachu-shaped firework exploded in the sky. Night had fallen deeply. After the fireworks show, Johan carried a sleeping Alolan Vulpix, accompanied by Ghastly as they headed home. Along the way, his phone suddenly buzzed. He pulled it out and saw. Psychic Girl, you've got some skills. Grain in the field. Psychic Girl. Kadabra didn't evolve, but after a nap, its psychic power grew significantly. Girl, did you sleep for 3 days? How long has it been since you last slept? This exchange confirmed Johan's suspicion that Psychic Girl was most likely a training fanatic. Her Pokémon probably barely had any time to rest. Psychic Girl, got any other suggestions? If Kadabra evolves or its psychic powers improve further, we're going to challenge it. Challenge it? Another Pokémon? This confirmed she was either a training or battle maniac. And trainers like this often lacked essential emotional bonds or connections with their Pokémon. This could explain why her Kadabra hadn't evolved despite meeting all the conditions. It likely had something to do with Psychic Girl herself. Grain in the field. Maybe you two should try doing something else? Like watching a movie together, going on a nature walk, or cooking a meal together. Psychic Girl. What nonsense is this? Grain in the field, just try it. And listen to what Kadabra has to say. Johan had realized something. With people who are arrogant and ill-tempered, you don't need to be overly polite. Otherwise, they'll end up walking all over you. But Johan soon thought about his own Alolan Vulpix. Her psychic powers were quite strong, but she had poor control over them. Grain in the field. By the way, you seem really skilled at training psychic-type Pokémon. Do you have any methods to help them improve their psychic control? Psychic Girl, what? You can't even control basic psychic abilities? Mocking.gif. Johan ignored her condescending remarks. Grain in the field. You're not saying you don't have any, right? Psychic Girl, don't be ridiculous. Just wait. After a while, as Johan neared home, his phone buzzed again. She had sent a file. Training notes for psychic Pokémon. Psychic Girl, old man's notes. Took forever to find them. After sending this, her profile went offline. But Johan's eyes lit up. She actually had something. Although Alolan Vulpix was an ice-type Pokémon, approaching her training from the perspective of psychic power was not a bad idea. After his experience with Psychic Girl, Johan made a decision. He needed to set a friend request approval requirement, applications only, no automatic ads. It wasn't about his rising popularity going to his head, it was more about the odd and random questions some people sent that left him bewildered. For example, someone once asked him, who's stronger, Magikarp or Phoeba? And another asked, hey, do you get pregnant from kissing? Gardevoir.blushing.gif. Humans really can't, or at least shouldn't, think this way. Such cases were just the tip of the iceberg. If he didn't set a filter, he'd be dealing with mental gymnastics every single day. The very least, questions should be relevant to Pokémon. Looking up at the bright moon, Johan shook his hands to relax. Tired. Carrying Alolan Vulpix was no easy task either. Caca. Ghastly floated over with a cheeky grin. Need me to take over? Johan squinted at him suspiciously. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed again. Fee eats cabbage, time for meditation. Johan sighed heavily. No rest for the weary. Grain in the field. Give me a moment, I'll be right there. The next morning, Johan woke up feeling remarkably refreshed despite the icy and tingling sensations. After a quick wash and a rushed breakfast, he headed to the academy. But today, he brought Alolan Vulpix along. Keeping her locked inside all the time wouldn't do her any good. And last night, she had shown great progress. She had bravely taken a step forward. As the coffee machine loudly brewed his cup, Johan prepared himself a fresh coffee. Vulpix. Hearing Johan call, the somewhat nervous and lost-looking Alolan Vulpix turned towards him. She saw Johan smiling at her while holding a cup of coffee and crouching down. Ghastly's expression turned alarmed. Caca! Don't drink it. But Johan simply chuckled. Blow on it. Hoo-woo. Alolan Vulpix wasn't sure what was going on, but she obediently blew on the cup. In an instant, the steaming hot espresso turned into a chilled iced coffee. Johan took a big gulp, smacking his lips in satisfaction, and patted Vulpix's head in praise. Well done, Vulpix. Ooh-woo. Vulpix bashfully turned her head away. It's really nothing. But the way her 6 fluffy tails swayed in excitement gave away her true feelings. Caca! Ghastly, who was floating mid-air, froze. Wait, hold up. Aren't you gonna let Vulpix have a sip? Ghastly, I have a morning meeting today. To look after Vulpix and make sure she doesn't wander off. After finishing his iced coffee in one go, Johan gave his instructions. Caw-caw. Ghastly nodded solemnly. Mission accepted. Bang. As soon as Johan left, Ghastly grinned mischievously and turned to Alolan Vulpix. Hoo-woo. Seeing Ghastly's expression, Vulpix's body tensed slightly, with faint psychic ripples emanating. Caca-caca. Ghastly quickly patted his face and dialed back his grin, clearing his throat. Caw-caw. As I mentioned before, in the Johan household, hypnosis is the most important skill. Now, let me teach you the hypnosis techniques Johan once taught me. Hearing this, Alolan Vulpix's eyes sparkled with excitement and she nodded eagerly. After the morning meeting, Duff, the first-year battle class advisor who had become acquainted with Johan during their previous field trip, approached him. Mr. Duff, this isn't appropriate. Of course it is, Professor Johan, the well-built Duff replied confidently. Your battle video with Lance went viral online, and even the director praised it during the meeting. Duff, with his well-organized thoughts, was highly respected as the main advisor for the Academy's most prominent first-year battle class. The kids in the first-year class idolize your strategies. If you give them a tactics lesson, they'd be overjoyed. But I'm just a Pokémon psychology instructor, Johan replied helplessly. Thanks, but no thanks. Don't worry, you won't be teaching alone. I've invited an old friend of mine to help. Even if you just make an appearance, it'll be more than enough. Duff laughed heartily, clapping Johan on the shoulder before leaving without giving him a chance to refuse. An old friend? Who is it? Johan asked, curious. Royal Masked Man. Duff's voice echoed down the hallway. Huh? Johan blinked in surprise. Royal Masked Man? Professor Kukui. Feeling a mix of confusion and anticipation, Johan returned to his consultation room. As soon as he opened the door, he shivered violently. Inside the room, a thin layer of snow had formed, turning it into a winter wonderland. Alolan Vulpix stood dazed in the middle of the room, while Ghastly awkwardly turned his head, forcing a grin. Caw-caw. It's not my fault, I swear. You too. Johan pinched the bridge of his nose, taking a deep breath. It was evident what had caused the state of the consultation room, Alolan Vulpix's ability, Snow Warning. Snow Warning. When a Pokémon with this ability enters the field, the weather will change to snow, lasting for a set duration. This ability, along with Drought, Drizzle, and Sandstream, is known as one of the 4 major weather abilities. Experienced trainers often build their entire teams around such abilities, forming strategies like hail teams, sun teams, rain teams, and sandstorm teams. For now, Johan wasn't aiming to form such a team. He had only 2 Pokémon and was finding it challenging enough to care for them, let alone create an entire team strategy. However, Alolan Vulpix's ability gave him a possible direction to explore. Although Johan had been aware of Vulpix's ability, since he had captured her, she hadn't exhibited any characteristics of Snow Warning. "Oh, Alolan Vulpix tensed up, lowering her head as if realizing she had done something wrong. "You two want to have a snowball fight?" Johan's voice cut through the tension. "Caca. Hoo. Smack." Before Ghastly could react, a snowball splattered against its face, bursting into a flurry of snowflakes. Culprit was, of course, Johan, who crouched down, rolling a second snowball. "Caca." Ghastly, now aware of what was happening, let out a sinister laugh and began manipulating the accumulated snow with its black mist. "Vulpix, quickly, hit it!" Johan urged. Smack. Just as he was speaking, Johan himself got nailed with a snowball square on the head, turning half his hair white. "Oh." Alolan Vulpix stood there, stunned, watching Johan and Ghastly locked in a playful snowball fight. Her nose twitched slightly and her eyes filled with tears. In the past, her uncontrollable snowstorms and her inability to manage her abilities had led her to be deemed an ill omen. That's why she always tried to suppress herself, so much so that even she forgot what she was capable of. But Johan and Ghastly didn't reject or hate her. They accepted her as she was. "Oh." With a deep breath, Alolan Vulpix focused her powers, quickly gathering a snowball. In an instant, it had grown to the size of a millstone. "Caca." Sigma, LLL. Seeing the massive snowball, Ghastly yelped in shock. "Is she cheating?" Johan's eyebrow twitched. He turned his head and closed his eyes. "Ghastly, tonight Vulpix will let you have 2 sips. Boom. Caca. 2 hours later. Johan, having shed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had finally managed to clean up the snow that had piled up in the consultation room. Ghastly lay sprawled on a single cedar couch, pretending to be weak, while Alolan Vulpix lay beside it with an apologetic expression. She gently fanned Ghastly with her 6 fluffy tails like a large fan. Ghastly, meanwhile, looked to be in heaven. "Caca-oh-oh." Johan chose not to call Ghastly out on its act. After all, it had indeed been hit directly by Alolan Vulpix's giant spiral snowball. "All right, get ready. We're heading out to help with a tactical class." "Caca." Ghastly perked up. "Helping in class?" Johan nodded. If it were just about assisting Duff with a tactical class, Johan would have refused. After all, if he were to teach, well, his strategies could be a bit too intense for the students' innocent minds. But since Duff had also invited the Royal Masked Man, Johan decided it was worth attending. As a professional wrestler, the Royal Masked Man was quite popular online. However, that identity wasn't the key point. The critical point was the person behind the mask. Professor Kukui, the future leading researcher of Pokémon moves in the Alola region. Of course, Professor Kukui might not yet have earned his doctorate at this stage. He was likely still studying and gaining experience. This brought Johan's thoughts to the Alola region. Alola hadn't established a Pokémon League yet, and one of Kukui's greatest dreams was to establish the Alola League. To achieve this, the young Kukui was traveling and studying different regions to learn from their league systems. In the future, he would not only establish the Alola Pokémon League but also the Alola Pokémon School. He would serve as both the league champion and a teacher at the school while continuing his research on Pokémon moves, a remarkably capable individual. He would be one of the rare few to achieve a doctorate and become a top-tier trainer. The previous person to do so was Professor Oak. Moreover, despite all his success, Kukui would eventually marry a very beautiful wife, Professor Burnett. Not even Professor Oak could top that. For Johan, though, the most important part was that Kukui was from Alola. and Alolan Vulpix was also from Alola, the largest lecture hall at Kanaz Academy, which also served as the Academy's auditorium. Students began arriving in groups, chatting happily and accompanied by their Pokémon. Backstage in the preparation room, or more accurately, the dressing room behind the stage. "Mr. Duff, didn't you say this was for the first-year battle class?" Johan rubbed his forehead. Such a large lecture hall couldn't possibly be for just one class. "Ha ha, it's all good," Duff laughed heartily. He leaned in closer to Johan and whispered, "Don't worry, the Academy approved this event, and Professor Johan, your appearance fee is the same as the Royal Masked Man's." He gave Johan a knowing look and a wink. Johan straightened his expression. "As an instructor, the appearance fee isn't important. I simply believe that a teacher should focus on guidance, education, and problem-solving." Guidance, education, and problem-solving, well said. That moment, a man with a well-built but not overly muscular frame walked in, wearing an exaggerated mask. It was the Royal Masked Man, Kukui. "Alola, you too." Seeing Duff and Johan looking over, Kukui grinned and posed with his hands on his hips. It was very reminiscent of a certain teacher's iconic stance in the Pokémon world. Through exchanging greetings, Johan learned from Duff that he used to be a wrestler himself. He had lost a match to Kukui and challenged him to a Pokémon battle to prove himself. He lost again, but the two had become friends. "Kaka!" Ghastly mimicked Kukui's pose, grinning widely. Duff and Kukui both paused, surprised. Johan turned away. "Can't bear to watch." "Ha ha, looks like you two will get along just fine," Duff chuckled, pushing over a cart filled with Pokeballs. "You guys can chat for now. You might need to demonstrate some tactics later, and these are for teaching purposes." As an instructor in the battle class, Duff couldn't rely solely on his own Pokémon to demonstrate every tactic and concept. Therefore, teaching Pokémon were essential. These Pokémon typically resided in the Academy's dedicated care facilities. While they wouldn't be suitable for actual battles, they were perfect for demonstrations. After Duff left, Kukui, ever friendly, turned to Johan. "I watched your battle with the Dragon Master Lance, Professor Johan. Your strategy of Protect Toxic Substitute was impressively executed, with additional layers of tactical thinking." "I saw your comment too," Johan thought silently, smiling as he replied. "I often watch your matches as the Royal Masked Man too." "Oh, really? Which one?" Kukui's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Johan? Hey, is this an Alolan Vulpix?" Kukui asked, his attention shifting to the little Pokémon nestled in Johan's arms. "Goo-wood." Hearing Kukui's voice, Alolan Vulpix burrowed further into Johan's embrace. "It is," Johan confirmed, gently stroking the little one's fur to reassure her. "Mr. Royal Masked Man, you're from Alola, right? I'd like to ask you a few things after class if that's all right." "No problem." Kukui thumped his chest enthusiastically, his eyes burning with determination. "But Professor Johan, don't hold back later. I want to see your tactics in action." Johan, who was browsing through the teaching Pokémon list, paused. A slow smile spread across his face. "Is that so?" His hand stopped on a Pokeball containing a Lapras. "Ghastly, it looks like you've got a new strategy to try." "It's Johan-sensei. And there's also the Royal Masked Man." "Wow, are these two really giving us a tactics class?" The students buzzed with excitement as Johan and Kukui stepped onto the stage, introduced by Duff. Both of them were well-known figures, and their presence caused quite a stir among the first-year battle students who had gathered for a routine tactics class. Many students whipped out their phones to record the lesson, while others eagerly messaged friends or posted updates on the campus forums. Before long, students from the second, third, and even fourth years began pouring into the lecture hall, ditching games, dates, and even skipping classes to attend. Johan-sensei. Down in the audience, Stephen, Roxanne, and Flannery looked surprised to see him, but they quickly focused up, knowing that Johan's tactics were not to be missed, even if not directly adopted. All right, you two, prepare your Pokémon, Duff announced, acting as the referee. Go! Kukui tossed a red and white Pokeball, and an orange, hefty Pokémon appeared on the field. Ooh! It was none other than a Dragonite, the pseudo-legendary Pokémon from the Kanto region. In reality, Dragonite looked even rounder than one might imagine, especially with that chubby belly which practically begged to be patted. A Dragonite? Come on, that's not fair, Royal Masked Man. But Dragonite is so adorable. Seeing Kukui's choice of Pokémon, Johan's expression turned a bit odd, but he released his own carefully chosen Pokémon. What? Peering in front of Johan was a Lapras, with a tough shell on its back and a serene blue color. Is this a preview of Lance versus Lorelei? Or maybe a lesson for Lorelei on how to handle Lance? Johan thought to himself. It's not the protect toxic strategy? Lapras! Ice-type attacks are 4 times effective against Dragonite. This is in the bag for Johan-sensei. Even I could do this. With Dragonite's 4-time ice weakness, strategy seemed almost unnecessary. Just brute force with ice-type moves would do. Despite this, Kukui looked confident, and his confidence seemed to inspire Dragonite, who sharpened its gaze despite its plump appearance. Ooh! Omega! Begin the battle! Dragonite safeguard! Kukui took the initiative. Clearly, Kukui was worried about Johan's protect toxic strategy, so he chose Dragonite, who could use Safeguard to avoid many potential problems. Even though Johan was using Lapras this time, Kukui opted for caution. After all, frozen status could also be troublesome. Seeing this, Johan smiled and gave a simple command. Lapras Ice Beam. The students were not wrong. When you have a 4-time effectiveness, what else is there to do but charge ahead? What? Lapras launched a pale blue chilling beam from its mouth. But Kukui had anticipated this and grinned. He made a broad, sweeping motion with his hand. Dragonite, use extreme speed to dodge. In an instant, Dragonite's body was enveloped in a radiant white glow as it flapped its wings hard, dramatically increasing its speed. Dragonite narrowly dodged the ice beam, only allowing its tail to graze the edge. The move Extreme Speed has a high priority, granting Dragonite a massive speed boost. There are stories of Dragonite being able to circle the globe in 16 hours, most likely with extreme speed at its disposal. If Dragonite and Kukui had the same level of synergy as Lance's Dragonite, perhaps it truly could dodge Ice Beam perfectly. Plus, with Safeguard in effect, the frost that had grazed Dragonite's tail quickly melted away. More importantly, Dragonite suddenly pulled out an apple with a bite taken out of it, rubbed it on itself, and took a hearty chomp. It was holding the item leftovers. Dragonite regained a small amount of health. Johan had always wondered whose leftovers are those. Why are they so effective? He really dodged it? Dragonites way faster than Lapras. Where's that guy who said even I could do this? Students in the audience couldn't help but find the match increasingly interesting. Johan-sensei, type advantages don't determine everything, Kukui laughed confidently, his eyes sharpening. Now it's our turn. Dragonite, use Thunder Punch. Johan sighed inwardly. Seems we'll have to play like this after all. Lapras, sing your song, Parish Song. What? A melodious, ethereal tune echoed from Lapras like the gentle flow of a mountain stream. Dragonite's plump body visibly shuddered. Kukui frowned. In reality, Parish Song works by creating a special frequency of air vibrations that invoke fear deep within the target's mind. As the fear takes root and spreads, the affected Pokémon gradually loses its will to battle. The battle had now turned into a race against time. Parish Song, is this a new strategy? Isn't that a mutual defeat move? ZZZZZ. Dragonite's Thunder Punch struck Lapras mid-song. Whoa! Lapras let out a pained cry. Dragonite, one more time, Kukui commanded. Buzz. But a faint green barrier enveloped Lapras. Protect. However, Dragonite's thunder-infused fist shattered the shield with a mighty punch. Kukui's eyes flashed with determination. Now's the moment. Outrage. Dragonite's eyes turned bloodshot as dark red energy swirled around it. It went berserk, slashing wildly at Lapras. Kukui was exploiting the lowered success rate of using Protect consecutively, betting that Johan would follow the common protect tactic. Although Outrage would leave Dragonite in a confused state afterward, it would also break through Lapras's substitute, exploiting its speed advantage to land the final blow before Lapras could protect again. But Johan calmly instructed. Lapras, go to sleep. Rest. This Lapras had the shell armor ability, preventing critical hits, and Johan equipped it with the item focus sash, ensuring it wouldn't be knocked out in one hit while at full health. Using rest, Lapras would completely restore its HP. So even if Kukui had successfully exploited the gap between protects, Lapras would still outlast him. 'Cause even with Perish Song affecting both, Dragonite's higher speed and larger, more aggressive movements would cause it to succumb first. Moreover, Lapras also knew the move Sleep Talk, allowing it to successfully use Protect once more while asleep. For a moment, the entire lecture hall was dead silent. A few minutes later, Dragonite's berserk rage from Outrage subsided, but its heart was now full of fear. With a heavy thud, Dragonite plopped down, having lost its will to fight. Ooh. The winner is Johan Sensei. Duff, a bit slow to react, finally announced the result. And in an instant, the crowd erupted into cheers. The royal masked man had shown great skill, commanding Dragonite to dodge Ice Beam with extreme speed, shifting from a defensive to an offensive position. He had even successfully exploited the vulnerability in Protect. But in the end, Johan's strategy was just too resilient. That was so dirty. Hey, who's got a video of this? Send it to me. I've got it. I need a battle partner right now. Who's up for it? Johan Sensei, what about in non-1v1 battles? How would this strategy work? After all, if a Pokémon hit by Perish Song was withdrawn, its effects would dissipate. As Johan returned Lapras to its ball, he chuckled lightly. Lapras can learn Whirlpool or Block. Oh crap. Another counter. I feel like I'm invincible now. Every battle's gonna be a trade. I hereby declare Johan Sensei as the master of tactical. No dirty strategies. Johan stepped off the stage. Ghastly and Alolan Vulpix rushed up to him immediately. Ooh! Alolan Vulpix's eyes were filled with admiration. So this is what an Ice-type battle is like. Johan picked up Alolan Vulpix and looked at Ghastly. Don't worry, this will also be one of your future strategic reserves. Caw. Ghastly was about to cheer excitedly when its body suddenly shook. Its tongue rolled out, bringing with it a phone covered in drool. Johan accepted the phone with a twitch of his lips, seeing a friend request notification. King of the land, please approve me. He casually pressed reject. Good thing I set up a screening process. Who has the guts to call themselves the king of the land? While saying this, Johan subtly wiped his hand on Alolan Vulpix's fur. Alolan Vulpix? Kanto region, Viridian City. Boss, why has Mewtwo gotten so much stronger? Sabrina pouted, her Kadabra by her side, looking displeased. When it came to psychic abilities, Sabrina had never accepted defeat. Even though her Pokémon was still just a Kadabra and had not yet evolved into an Alakazam, its psychic strength could rival if not surpass many fully evolved Alakazams. More importantly, as a true psychic herself, Sabrina could amplify Kadabra's power using her own abilities, allowing it to unleash even greater destructive force. That is, until she met Mewtwo. For the first time, Sabrina felt what it was like to be utterly overpowered in terms of psychic strength. But she wasn't willing to accept it. She kept thinking about how she could use her abilities to defeat Mewtwo. This was also why she wasn't overly concerned about evolving Kadabra until recently, when she started wanting it to evolve. Recently, an online Pokémon psychologist named Grain in the Field had inspired her, causing Kadabra's psychic powers, and even her own, to grow significantly. Now she thought she could take on Mewtwo again. But when she tried, Mewtwo's power had become even more monstrous. "And that's not even all of Mewtwo's power," Giovanni said calmly, stroking his Persian. Sabrina pursed her lips, knowing this was true. After all, Mewtwo was still wearing that armor designed to suppress its strength. "Still, Sabrina, you've changed a lot recently." Giovanni's gaze shifted to Kadabra by Sabrina's side. As someone blessed by Viridian Forest and possessing the power of Viridian, Giovanni could clearly sense the changes in Sabrina and Kadabra. "Have I?" Sabrina looked at Kadabra. Kadabra forced a grin. "Kadabra? All right, I guess." Sabrina shrugged. "Recently, I met a Pokémon psychologist online named Grain in the Field." "Oh." Giovanni raised an eyebrow. Sabrina stretched lazily, her silhouette revealing a smooth, graceful curve. "He seems pretty good at battle tactics, too. Just beat Lance recently." She yawned, waving her hand dismissively. "Boss, I'm going to bed. Kadabra and I have to cook later." It's exhausting trying to compete with Mewtwo's psychic powers. But the fact that sleeping and cooking could improve psychic powers, well, it was quite remarkable. "Cooking?" Giovanni's hand paused mid-stroke on Persian's fur, his brows furrowing. "A coincidence? Or, sir, it's true." "Sabrina does seem a bit different," said his secretary, Domino, softly. "Domino, is the database restored?" Giovanni asked. "And no," Domino stammered slightly, trying to explain. "That, primarily, Porygon hasn't fully recovered from the Kaka attack, so..." "Try reaching out to this Grain in the Field person," Giovanni instructed. Domino's pupils shrank. "Boss, are you saying... could he be connected to Mewtwo?" Domino didn't press further, pulling out her phone to make the request. As Giovanni waited, Domino's fingers froze suddenly. Boss, I got rejected." "Giovanni." "Hoenn Region, Rustboro Pokémon Academy." "Kaka." Ghastly tilted its head, confused, looking up at Johan. "It's nothing. Just someone with a huge ego using an exaggerated nickname and failing to explain their issue." I declined. Recently there had been many like this, so Johan had set his phone to vibrate mode, only allowing notifications from actual patients. Ghastly glanced at the phone sneakily. "King of the land?" "Ka. Whoa, that's quite the bold nickname." "King of the land? Where does that leave Groudon?" Through Johan and Kukui stepped down, the stage was left to Duff once more. In truth, the parish song strategy, though considered dirty by some, wasn't an unknown technique. Plenty of people were aware of it and even tried to use it. The problem was that few could use it effectively. For instance, Agatha, who had given Johan the Dread Manual, was a prime example of a parish song user. However, Agatha's strategy was a far cry from Johan's. Her legions of ghost-type Pokémon were no joke, earning her the title of the Warlord Queen for a reason. Similarly, in the future, Kanto's Ice-type master would also become a proficient user of the parish song strategy, serving as a significant roadblock for Lance on his path to the championship. The thing about certain tactics is that knowing them is one thing and executing them is another. Besides, strategies, read dirty tricks, are flexible and varied. This isn't a game where each Pokémon can only have 4 moves. Trying to copy strategies verbatim could lead to an embarrassing loss without understanding why. Backstage. "Johan-sensei, I didn't expect you to use the parish song strategy," Kukui said with a helpless smile. Even with Dragonite's quadruple ice-type weakness, Kukui wasn't worried. As a pseudo-legendary Pokémon, Dragonite's inherent strengths covered many weaknesses. However, the parish song strategy took him by surprise, as few could execute it well. Johan chuckled softly. He had considered other options. Kukui would definitely be on guard against something as simple as Substitute Protect Toxic. Other moves like Spikes or Venoshock were not worth mentioning. full defensive teams, sturdy Shedinja, these required more structure. Even something as solid as a weakness policy Sandstream Palosand was a gamble. As for serene Graceair/flinches, Johan questioned his own luck. After all, he'd experienced 5 consecutive misses and 7 straight failures before. Plus, while the Academy had many teaching Pokémon, he couldn't just pick any random one and expect its moves and abilities to fit. Kukui was obviously strong, so the Parish Song strategy, which forced a 1-for-1 trade, was relatively reliable. And besides, with Mega Evolution not yet widely available, something like the Mega Glalie Explosion would have been ideal. Wait a minute. The thought suddenly struck Johan. If Lorelei knew about Mega Glalie explosions, Lance might never be able to overcome that hurdle in his life. Johan-sensei, I have a request, Kukui said seriously. Johan was pulled from his thoughts. Please go ahead. If, and this is just an if, the Alola region ever establishes a Pokémon Academy, could we invite you to occasionally give a lecture? After a brief moment of hesitation, Johan nodded. If I have time, I wouldn't mind. After all, he was planning to visit the Alola region eventually due to Alolan Vulpix. If his schedule allowed, he wouldn't mind helping out. Plus, he was curious about that girl who once fished up a Phoeba with a fishing rod. That's fantastic. Kukui's face lit up with joy. For someone dedicated to developing Alola, he greatly valued the opportunity to have someone like Johan on board. However, there's something I'd like to ask for help with in return, Royal Masked Man. Oh. Kukui looked intrigued. Ghastly, take Wu out to play, but don't go too far. Johan put Alolan Vulpix on the ground. Caw. Ghastly grinned mischievously, while Alolan Vulpix hesitated. With Johan's encouraging look, Vulpix finally followed Ghastly away. Though Kukui looked curious, he remained silent and waited for Johan to speak. Well, it's like this. After choosing his words carefully, Johan briefly explained Alolan Vulpix's situation from beginning to end. After listening, Kukui frowned. Poaching? Or... In recent years, more and more people had been traveling to Alola, especially in the summer. However, without a unified league structure in Alola, certain issues were challenging to address comprehensively despite their best efforts. If not for the island kahunas, who knows what kind of chaos might have ensued. Taking a deep breath, Kukui said gravely, I understand. Even if it weren't for Johan and Alolan Vulpix, Kukui would still strive to investigate this matter now that he was aware of it. Just then, a student rushed into the room. Johan-sensei, your Ghastly seems to be fighting with another Pokémon. Meanwhile, the video of Johan and Kukui's battle was spreading rapidly online. Below in a Silver Academy Kanto region. In a dorm room adorned with cute cartoons and overflowing with a girlish vibe, a tall girl with shiny black stockings and a tight black skirt wearing thin-framed glasses was hugging a chubby Jigglypuff plushie, her face lit with girlish delight. Bam! Suddenly, the dorm door was flung open, and in walked another girl with long bluish-gray hair, wearing a yellow crop top and strutting in golden high heels. Lorelei, you should. The girl holding the plushie was none other than the future Kanto Elite Four member and Ice-type master, Lorelei. The bluish-gray-haired girl had just entered but stopped mid-sentence when she saw Lorelei's pale cheeks turn slightly pink as she hastily hid the Jigglypuff plushie behind her. Oh, stop hiding it, I saw it, the blue-haired girl teased playfully. Who would have thought that our cool Ice Queen actually has such a girly side? Lorelei coughed lightly, her expression gradually returning to its usual cold demeanor. Lyra, say what you came to say. So, the bluish-gray-haired girl was Lyra, the future Johto Elite Four Dark-type master. Lyra pouted in response. It's a shame no one else will see this side of you. Just check the League website. There's a Parish Song strategy that's really interesting. Parish Song? Lorelei raised an eyebrow as she reached for her tablet, wrapped in an Eevee-themed case. Not many people can use that strategy effectively. The only ones I know are Agatha. Opening the league website, she quickly found the video, which was rapidly gaining traction. Johan? This name sounds vaguely familiar. And the opponent is the Royal Masked Man? The Royal Masked Man was more well-known than Johan, especially since his skills were recognized by many top trainers. Curious, Lorelei started watching, her calm, icy eyes slowly revealing a look of surprise as the video progressed. "Well," Lyra asked, crossing her legs and leaning on the table with a keen grin. "Pretty interesting, huh?" Lorelei, engrossed in the video, didn't respond immediately. After a while, she set the tablet down, her eyes flashing with contemplation as she murmured, "Using rest with focus sash, alternating substitute with protect, and opening with parish song, if the strength gap isn't too large. Tsh dirty, isn't it?" Lyra said, teasing. "You use parish song too, but this one's on another level." Lorelei twirled a lock of hair between her fingers. "It's got a bit of Agatha's touch to it, but it does fit Lapra's quite well." Lyra leaned in, lowering her voice. "Aren't you going to take on that guy soon?" "Blackthorn City, Dragon's Den, Jada region." "Let's land, Dragonite." Lance patted Dragonite, smiling. Dragonite had just recently evolved, so Lance had been training in Blackthorn City these past few days, not just for Dragonite but for Aerodactyl too. "What is it, Claire?" Claire, a girl with light blue hair tied in a ponytail, wearing a fitted outfit accentuating her figure, and the future Blackthorn City gym leader, handed Lance a tablet. "Look, Johan's video is up." "Really?" Lance's eyes lit up as he took the tablet. Big bro, I'd advise not to." But Claire spoke too late. Lance and Dragonite were already watching the video intensely. They watched the entire thing in one go. When they finished, Lance turned his head stiffly towards Dragonite. "Rar?" Dragonite mumbled with a confused expression. "Hoenn region, Rustboro Pokémon Academy." Ghastly getting into a fight with another Pokémon was the last thing Johan expected. Typically, while mischievous, Ghastly mostly liked to prank people within reason. It was surprising to see it actually engaging in a fight. So, Johan immediately followed the student who reported the incident. As per Johan's instructions, Ghastly and Vulpix hadn't gone far. They were near a wooded area behind the lecture hall. The Rustboro Academy's grounds were well maintained with ample greenery, which meant not only students' Pokémon but also the Academy's Pokémon, and even some wild ones roamed the campus. The wild Pokémon on campus were usually mild-mannered and familiar with humans due to prolonged interaction with students and their Pokémon. But there are always exceptions. In the Rustboro Academy's small forest lived a group of Slakoth and Vigoroth. They were known around campus as bullies, frequently teasing couples sneaking into the woods and pulling playful pranks on them. It was rumored that these Slakoth and Vigoroth were left behind by a trainer who had once trained here. Over time, students jokingly dubbed the area the couple's burial woods. Or, more succinctly, the Forest of Love's demise. When Johan arrived, he saw Ghastly facing off against two Vigoroth. Nearby, 4 or 5 Slakoth were sprawled out in deep sleep. It was hard to tell whether they were naturally sleeping or if Ghastly had put them under. However, when Johan saw an empty Moo milk bottle and Vulpix's teary eyes, he made a guess. Seemed likely that Ghastly had taken Vulpix for a stroll around the academy, showing it the grounds while enjoying some Moo milk. But then, a couple of Vigoroth must have appeared, trying to steal their milk, leading to this showdown. A battle over milk? A war for Moo milk? Come to think of it, Vigoroth, being a normal type with the Vital Spirit ability, did have an advantage over a ghost type like Ghastly that specialized in control moves. Vital Spirit prevents the Pokémon from falling asleep. Vigu. Before Johan could get closer, one of the Vigoroth growled and charged at Ghastly with incredible speed. Ghastly Smog then used Toxic. Caca. Upon hearing Johan's command, Ghastly's eyes lit up with excitement. It released a thick cloud of purple smog, obscuring the Vigoroth's vision, and then darted behind it. Sticking out its tongue mockingly, Ghastly spat out a glob of sticky, venomous liquid onto the Vigoroth's back. Hey-tay! The second Vigoroth couldn't hold back any longer and lunged at Ghastly. Vulpix, use confusion. Johan's footsteps gradually slowed. Oh! Vulpix's wide eyes glanced between Johan, Ghastly, and the approaching Vigoroth, unsure of what to do. You don't want to see Ghastly get hurt, right? Johan's voice was soft yet firm. Hearing this, Vulpix grew increasingly anxious, whimpering softly, clearly hesitant and conflicted. But as the Vigoroth's claws closed in on Ghastly, Vulpix's expression shifted in an instant. Oh! A powerful psychic force erupted, sending both Vigoroth flying, the one hit with toxic included. Caw-caw! Watching the Vigoroth get flung away, Ghastly reminisced about its own experience not long ago. No, I definitely looked cooler when I got blasted away, it mused. What happened? Johan approached, frowning. Ooh. Returning to its senses, Vulpix looked up at Johan with teary eyes on the verge of crying. I couldn't put them to sleep. I couldn't put the Vigoroth to sleep. I'm not good enough, Vulpix seemed to be thinking. Johan raised an eyebrow at Vulpix's explanation. Perhaps the situation wasn't exactly as he had initially thought. Where are you going? Turning around, Johan caught Ghastly trying to sneak away. Ghastly jolted, freezing in its tracks, and turned back with an awkward grin, tongue lolling out. It uncurled its tongue to reveal a lumberry, slightly marred by claw marks. Caw-caw, want some? Tastes pretty good. Johan narrowed his eyes. Is that all? Caw-caw. That's it. I swear. Not convinced, Johan grabbed Ghastly, ignoring the tingling sensation in his fingers from the contact, and turned it upside down. Caw-caw-caw. From Ghastly's mouth spilled 5 or 6 lumberries, 3 hairpins, 2 hats, 2 pens, and a couple of shed Vigoroth claws. Johan's eyes narrowed further. Are you a Ghastly or a Greedent? Grrrrrr. Suddenly, a deeper, more intimidating roar echoed from within the forest. In the counseling room. Caw-caw. Ghastly floated by the wall, grinning awkwardly. Despite its best efforts, it just couldn't manage to look serious. Johan was sitting there, holding a Alolan Vulpix in his arms. His hand gently ruffled through Vulpix's soft, cool, and fluffy fur while silently eyeing Ghastly. Ooh! Vulpix let out a purring sound like a satisfied kitten, casting Ghastly an apologetic look. So, what's the story? Johan finally asked. Just a little while ago, Ghastly and Vulpix hadn't just put the already lazy Slacketh into a deep sleep estimated to last 3 days. They also drove away several Vigoroth. They even managed to disturb the notorious Slaking, rumored not to have bathed in 3 years. If Slaking had come out, Johan wouldn't have known how to handle the situation. Now with the chance to explain, Ghastly began to babble eagerly. Caw-caw-caw-caw. Listen to me. I have a totally reasonable explanation. Turned out Ghastly had taken Vulpix on a stroll around the area. They'd stumbled upon a couple of Vigoroth who were bullying 2 Academy Oddish by stealing their lumberries. Would it let that slide? No way. Ghastly stepped in to knock down 2 of them but was then chased by more Vigoroth. To make matters worse, the Vigoroth had also set their sights on the moo milk Ghastly and Vulpix were enjoying. One of the Vigoroth even struck Vulpix, causing it to cry out, which inadvertently put several Slacketh into a deep sleep. But could Ghastly just sit back and let that happen? Absolutely not. It relayed its tale with impassioned indignation, almost like a hero defending the weak. After hearing it all, Johan pressed his lips together in thought before summarizing it all. So, basically, you went thief versus thief? Caw-caw. Ghastly tried to protest further, but Johan had already made up his mind. He sighed, rubbing his temples. This is going downhill. Breaking and entering. Thief-on-thief action. Ghastly, you're getting deeper and deeper into the path of not-so-legal activities. As punishment, you're not playing on your phone tonight, Johan said firmly. Kaka. Sigma, LLL. Ghastly looked like it had turned to stone. My Eevee. My Pikachu. My Poplio. And later, take some poke blocks to give to those oddish, Johan added. Ghastly nodded dully, like its soul had left its body. Then, almost instinctively, it asked, Kaka, what about the Vigoroth? Johan's narrowed. Be glad we didn't escalate things with them. Picking on Vulpix? Next time you're bored, go play with them, Johan said with a hint of mischief in his voice. Kaka. In the afternoon, Johan set up a training routine for Alolan Vulpix to practice controlling its psychic abilities. Although there were some unexpected hiccups, at least nobody got seriously hurt. Returning home that evening, Ghastly quietly slipped into a corner, trying to sneakily take out its phone. But it could feel a gaze burning into its back. Caw, grinned awkwardly, pretending the phone was meant for Vulpix to play with. Hoo-woo. Vulpix looked puzzled. Ghastly stuffed the phone into Vulpix's paws. Caw. Tap here, tap there, that's right. Let's watch Poplio's adventure together. Alolan Vulpix tilted its head, utterly confused. Vulpix? Johan observed Ghastly's coaching from the side but only chuckled, deciding not to intervene. He had work of his own to handle. The battle video had, without a doubt, been posted online, and a lot of people were trying to add him as a friend. Some genuinely wanted to seek advice on their Pokémon psychology, while others were simply curious or found it amusing. Like that king of the land from earlier. So, Johan needed to sift through the requests, filtering out those who had legitimate questions from those just wasting time. Even at this late hour, friend requests were trickling in. For instance, bird on the ground. What should I do if my Pokémon and I aren't close? That seemed like a reasonable question. Johan approved the request. Grain in the field. Can you describe the situation? The response came quickly. Bird on the ground. My Pokémon is really strong, super strong. But I have trouble, connecting with them. This seems like a typical case of a trainer having a powerful Pokémon that's beyond their control, Johan thought, somewhat reminiscent of a certain Charizard. Speaking of which, is this world more akin to Reds or Ashes? That was something Johan hadn't figured out yet. He quickly refocused his mind. Generally, there were two approaches to this problem. A trainer could improve their skills and gain the Pokémon's respect through battles and victories. Alternatively, they could focus on strengthening the bond or friendship between them and their Pokémon. Given the person's situation, Johan recommended the latter approach. Grain in the field. Are you able to communicate, or is communication itself an issue? Bird on the ground. We can communicate, but usually it initiates most of our interactions. Using voice to text, maybe? Typos are common. But Johan didn't think too deeply about it. Couldn't possibly be another Mewtwo, right? The odds were too low. Grain in the field. My suggestion is to focus on establishing a friendship or partnership first, and set aside the roles of trainer and Pokémon for the time being. Bird on the ground. How do I do that? Grain in the field. Whether it's a person or a Pokémon, winning their heart usually starts with winning their stomach. Team Rocket Base, Viridian City, Kanto region. In a dimly lit room, Metori clutched a tablet, her face glowing softly in the eerie light. She looked almost giddy. Winning their stomach. She peeked over at Giovanni, who was working intently. Sensing her gaze, Giovanni asked absent-mindedly without looking up, "Did you connect?" "Yes, sir," Metori replied, stiffening up. Giovanni paused, turning to face her. "What did he say?" Metori quickly dimmed the tablet screen and answered, "I used an alternate account to add him. We're still in the initial stages of communication, and I can't confirm anything yet." Giovanni nodded, shifting his focus back to his files. "Start investigating his background." "Understood. His tactical skills are impressive. He might be worth recruiting." "Yes, sir." Time passed. Life continued with its usual rhythm of training challenges and moments of joy. Alolan Vulpix gradually gained control over its abilities, while Ghastly appeared to be growing stronger and more solid. Sometimes Johan would don the guise of Fivefold and take his 2 Pokémon to the battle restaurant in Rustboro City to enjoy a hearty meal and gain some battle experience. They began with the basic-level restaurants where novice trainers frequented and eventually felt confident enough to challenge intermediate and even advanced-level battle restaurants. After all, even losing a battle just meant paying a bill that Johan had already planned for. As a result, the name Fivefold started to become more recognized among the city's battle restaurants. Even the initially wary restaurant owners came to realize the commercial value. Fivefold drew a crowd, and by advertising his visits a day in advance, they could attract even more customers and aspiring trainers. The urban legend of Fivefold continued to grow. On this day, the Rustboro Pokémon Academy was celebrating its fall festival. Campus was decked out in festive decor, exuding a lively and cheerful atmosphere. Johan had donned a black suit, accented with golden trim at the cuffs and collar. He sported a monocle and carried a cane as he walked through the academy grounds. This suit was something he had splurged on, technically reimbursed, though he couldn't quite understand why the reimbursed attire had to be so lavish. Ghastly floated by, eagerly glancing around, its mouth stuffed with food, while Johan's wallet continued to grow lighter. Walking by his side, Alolan Vulpix trotted along, wide-eyed with curiosity, as if experiencing everything for the first time. Over time, Vulpix had become noticeably more sociable, no longer as shy as it once was. "Professor Johan, you look so dashing today." "Wow, Alolan Vulpix is so adorable." "Need more food, Ghastly?" "Want some more?" Johan was quite popular among the students these days. "Professor Johan, would you like to pick out some outfits for your Pokémon?" A female student dressed in a medieval evening gown called out from her shop, which sold Pokémon costumes. Johan blinked, a little surprised. "Whoo!" Alolan Vulpix tilted its head, its eyes fixated on a Christmas-themed outfit inside the shop, its blue eyes sparkling with interest. Ghastly, on the other hand, stared blankly at a suit of knight's armor hanging on the wall, seemingly entranced. Noticing their reactions, Johan chuckled. "If you like something, go ahead and choose." "But Ghastly, I don't think the knight outfit is quite right for you. How about that mask instead?" After all, Ghastly only had a head. Armor required at least a pair of arms. "Caw-caw," Ghastly muttered, "but I have a knight's heart." Suddenly, Ghastly's body began to glow with a brilliant white light. Johan's expression froze. Wait, was it really evolving just for a costume? Whoo! Alolan Vulpix, Johan, and several students around them were all staring at Ghastly, now engulfed in bright light. Caw-caw! Even Ghastly itself seemed a bit bewildered. Within the shining glow, Ghastly's form began to shift. 2 arms gradually extended from its sides. The gaseous mist surrounding its body started to solidify, forming an eerie, spiky face on either side. Its once round, white eyes elongated into triangular slits, giving it a more sinister appearance. Black pupils now flickered with ghostly blue flames, and its previously small fangs turned into sharp, menacing ones. As the light faded, Ghastly's transformed shape fully emerged. No longer Ghastly, but now Haunter! Caw-caw! Haunter looked at its newly formed hands, moving them about, fascinated by its own changes. Its voice had also grown deeper and more resonant than before. "Haunter!" Johan called out with a grin. "Caw-caw!" Haunter paused for a moment before realizing that Johan was addressing it. The newly evolved Pokémon happily narrowed its eyes and, sticking out its now larger tongue, darted toward Johan to give him a big, wet lick. Johan's expression instantly shifted as he hurriedly shouted, "Wait! This outfit is expensive. The saliva, the saliva." Slurp. "TS, that paralysis is even stronger." He quickly bit into a sherry berry, its intense spiciness clearing the numbing sensation. Johan shot a half-annoyed look at Haunter, who snickered mischievously. He had every reason to suspect Haunter was paying him back for his earlier comment about the knight armor not suiting it. To be fair, Haunter's lick was evidently much more potent post-evolution. Johan, who had started getting used to Ghastly's lick after repeated practice, now found himself starting from scratch, actually worse than before. But regardless, congratulations on evolving, Haunter. Despite his playful resentment, Johan couldn't hide his genuine joy. The feeling of seeing a Pokémon evolve after all the time and effort put in together was profoundly rewarding. Transformation might have been triggered by an unexpected reason, but the evolution itself was undeniably a culmination of all their hard work. Caw-caw! Haunter blinked playfully, gesturing with its new hands. For all, no biggie, piece of cake. Then winked at Alolan Vulpix, who was watching it with wide eyes. Haunter's eyes started glistening with tears, and it dramatically sniffled. Caw-caw. It's been so hard, so very hard. Finally, I can pet Vulpix too. You have no idea how torturous it was to watch Johan pet Vulpix while I couldn't even touch it. Ooh. Alolan Vulpix's eyes glowed faintly with psychic energy. Caw-caw. Haunter quickly waved its hands in surrender. Kidding. Just kidding. Don't take it so seriously. As its gaze drifted toward the suit of knight's armor hanging on the wall, Johan couldn't help but twitch slightly. So this really was about that armor. A few minutes later, Alolan Vulpix was dressed in a stylish navy blue Christmas outfit, with the help of some female students who tied 6 light blue ribbons around its tails. Wow! So cute. Can I pet it? My heart, I can't take it. I'm dead. This is too much. Crowd that had initially gathered to watch Haunter's evolution was now swooning over the newly dressed Vulpix. It really does look great, Johan said, his eyes brightening with admiration. Whoa, / Q. It's not that great. Bang bang. Suddenly, from the direction of the shop's fitting room, a figure clad in deep purple armor, with a helmet that emitted a faint glow, came stomping out. When Johan saw this knightly figure emerge, he paused, muttering under his breath. Dark Inferno Knight? It wasn't an exact match, but there really was some resemblance. But the thing was, Haunter having arms made sense, it had claws after all. But what was going on with those legs? Curious, Johan approached and gently kicked the armored legs. Clank, clank. Empty. So the leg armor is just hanging there? Haunter. But something felt off to Johan. Normally, Haunter should be smugly showing off and flaunting by now, right? Caw-caw. I'm stuck. Help. Johan sighed deeply. I knew that big head of yours wouldn't fit inside a suit of armor. In the end, Johan continued strolling around the festival grounds with Vulpix, now in its new Christmas outfit, and Haunter, floating in midair wearing only half a suit of armor. Having hands had clearly made things easier for Haunter. It held an oversized ice cream in one hand while the other hand held a spoon. To be clear, the spoon was for Vulpix. Haunter preferred to chomp directly. Before long, half the massive ice cream was gone. The festival had plenty of attractions. There were haunted houses, food stalls, pop-up shops, battle arenas, and more. Haunter had wanted to explore the haunted house, but Johan quickly pulled it away, fearing that Haunter might accidentally scare the staff and ruin the experience for everyone else. As they wandered, they eventually reached the battle zone. This area was just as lively and decorated as the rest of the festival, attracting students and teachers alike who were passionate about Pokémon battles. The festival's battle zone featured a variety of formats. There were traditional 1v1s, 3v3 arena matches, double battles, tower challenges, and even special events. Unlike other areas that were student-organized, the battle zone was managed by the Academy itself to prevent any potential issues. For added safety, the Academy even brought in Nurse Joy from the Pokémon Center. Through all, Rustboro Academy was the largest Pokémon Academy in Hoenn, so they had enough clout to pull a few strings. and since it was Academy-sponsored, there were naturally prizes to motivate participants. "Good evening, Nurse Joy." Having met her before, Johan greeted Nurse Joy at the medical station. "Professor Johan." Nurse Joy's eyes lit up and she covered her mouth with a chuckle. "You look very handsome tonight." "Thank you." "Caw-caw." Haunter saluted with its new claws, waving to Nurse Joy and her Chansey. "Haunter? Did it evolve?" Nurse Joy observed. Johan felt a bit awkward. At least she didn't ask how it evolved. That would be too embarrassing to explain. "Ooh." Timid Vulpix also gave Nurse Joy a soft greeting, showing its progress. "Ah, Vulpix, you're so adorable." "Lucky." "Are you planning to participate in the tournament, Professor Johan?" "I heard the prizes this year are quite good," Nurse Joy asked. "Prizes?" "Professor Johan." Just then, Steven, dressed in his signature suit, approached them with a bright smile. "I was looking for you earlier, but I just knew I'd find you here." "What do you mean, just knew?" Johan thought. "Haunter? You're ghastly evolved." Steven noticed Haunter's armor, chuckling as he continued. "When did this happen?" While speaking, he also greeted Haunter and Vulpix warmly. Johan sighed inwardly. "Ahem, let's change the topic." "Steven, did you enter the tournament yet?" "No, not yet." Steven shook his head, smiling. "But I know the Academy put a lot of effort into this." The final prize for the Tower Challenge is a set of elemental gems. Caw-caw. Hearing this, Haunter's eyes gleamed with interest. "Do you want that set of elemental gems?" Seeing Haunter's excitement, Johan asked with a smile. "Caw-caw." Haunter scratched its head, the armor on its body making clinking noises as it shifted. The gems were secondary. Haunter was simply eager to battle and test its new abilities after evolving. Well then, Haunter had become clever. It was hard for Johan to discern its true motives. Or maybe Haunter wanted both the battle and the reward. However, Johan also wanted to gauge Haunter's strength. Said that Haunter is a dimensional creature capable of slipping into other dimensions. Some trainers who owned Haunters often had them hide in their shadows as a form of protection. Agatha, one of the Elite Four, was particularly skilled in this technique. It's rumored that not even those close to her knew how many ghost-type Pokémon were hiding in her shadow. In this world of Pokémon, a trainer must always be vigilant. When facing opponents who specialize in wild, no-holds-barred battles or those skilled in ambush tactics, even the Elite Four could be caught off guard. From Johan's recollection, the most striking example of this was Gold from Pokémon Adventures. In normal battles, Gold often struggled, but when it came to no-holds-barred situations, his precision and stealth were terrifying. Then, of course, there's Agatha and Lance, though Lance is more of a cautionary tale. Now that Ghastly had evolved into Haunter, it was like having an extra layer of protection for Johan. "Wanna give it a shot?" "Caw-caw." Haunter let out a manic laugh, twirling its long tongue in excitement. It was hunting time. Hearing this, Steven's eyes lit up. Normally, he wasn't too interested in participating in school festival battles. But if Johan was joining, he couldn't help but get intrigued. However, to Steven's surprise, Johan didn't head towards the 1v1 or 2v2 arenas. Instead, he walked straight toward the tower climb zone, which had fewer people around. The tower climb zone is self-explanatory. Challengers had to progress through a series of increasingly difficult opponents like climbing a tower. There were no breaks, and no healing items could be used in between battles. The higher a challenger climbed, the more rewards they earned at each stage. More importantly, with each stage, the opposing Pokémon would be slightly stronger than the previous ones. It was a test of both the trainer's strategy and their Pokémon's capabilities. Since the event was organized by the Academy, the opposing Pokémon were carefully selected to match the challenger's Pokémon strength. The early rounds wouldn't just consist of weak opponents. Caw-caw. Haunter looked around at the relatively quiet area, puzzled, and turned to Johan for an explanation. "Here?" Holding Vulpix in his arms, Johan offered a simple reason. As a teacher, battling students wouldn't look good. People might think we're bullying them, especially some of those big baby-like opponents. Steven? Why did it sound like Johan was calling out specific people? Caw. Haunter nodded with understanding, having developed a good rapport with Johan. One thing was clear. Steven had his eye on them, so they were keeping a low profile. Before challenging, Johan needed to confirm Haunter's new moves after evolving. At Johan's direction, Haunter's eyes glowed faintly. In Johan's line of sight, Haunter's updated Pokédex entry appeared. While not many changes were immediately visible, Haunter had gained the move Shadow Punch. Of course, it was a physical move, and Haunter excelled in special attacks, so Shadow Punch was mostly negligible. Still, the full extent of Haunter's evolution needed to be explored through further training and real battles. Professor Johan climbing the tower? The bored-looking advisor of Class 2, Year 1 of the Battle Department, Isaiah, perked up with interest. She had previously worked in the Battle Frontiers Battle Factory, making her well-versed in various Pokémon and their capabilities. She was perfect for overseeing the tower climb zone. The two weren't close friends, but they were familiar enough as fellow faculty members to exchange more than a nod in passing. Professor Isaiah. Johan greeted her with a friendly nod. Don't expect me to hold back, Isaiah cautioned. Of course. Johan agreed easily. I just want to test Haunter's strength. It recently evolved. Isaiah seemed to understand. She clapped her hands on a button set in the wall of the tower climb zone. Boom! A large screen on the wall of the zone lit up, displaying a giant 0. The noise caught the attention of a few nearby students. Originally, they weren't very interested, but upon seeing Johan step up to the challenge, they became curious. Simultaneously, Isaiah held a Pokeball in her hand. Seeing that Haunter had only just evolved, then the first opponent will be Beedrill. In a flash of red light, a Beedrill with sharp needle-like forelimbs appeared on the field. Haunter, Johan called calmly. With its typing advantage, Haunter was in a good position. Caw. Haunter shed its knight armor and set it aside, grinning wildly with excitement. Finally, my time to shine. Bring it on. Beedrill agility. Isaiah commanded, waving her hand decisively. Buzz. Beedrill's wings vibrated rapidly, its form flickering as it moved at high speeds, appearing at various corners of the battlefield. But neither Johan nor Haunter moved. Haunter's eyes kept following Beedrill's movements, trying to pinpoint its position. At the same time, Johan's line of sight revealed Beedrill's full Pokédex entry. The only Dark-type move it possessed was Payback. It had a fair amount of Bug and Poison-type moves, but Haunter, being part Poison itself, didn't need to worry about the Poison-type attacks. As for Bug-type moves, Haunter quadruple resisted them. Seeing Haunter's lack of movement, Isaiah frowned. Made things difficult for her. Beedrill, focus energy. Hypnosis. Just as Isaiah's command to focus was given and Beedrill stopped moving, Johan's order cut through the air. Caw. Haunter let out a sharp cry. This caught Beedrill's attention for a split second. And that was all Haunter needed. Beedrill's once intense gaze softened, becoming foggy and then drowsy. Haunter Hex. Haunter's eyes turned blood red, the crimson glow reflecting within Beedrill's mind. Boom! An ominous, muffled explosion echoed from within Beedrill. It fell to the ground, fainting on the spot. Caw. Next. Boom! The screen displayed 1 as the number 0 turned into 1. Isaiah recalled Beedrill, casting a contemplative look at both Haunter and Johan. Just a single hypnosis followed by Hex had taken down her Beedrill. While Beedrill was naturally a bit frail, this still indicated that Haunter's power wasn't to be underestimated. In that case, the second opponent will be Kingler. A Kingler with massive pincers materialized on the battlefield. Kingler used Bubble Beam. A Kingler with the sheer force ability? The Academy certainly had a wide variety of Pokémon. But Johan's strategy this time was entirely different, so when Isaiah gave her command, he already had his instructions in place. Haunter, hide in its shadow. As Kingler spat out bubbles, Haunter had already reappeared behind it. Close range, Haunter unleashed a clear smog, enveloping Kingler in toxic fumes. It had no chance to escape. A sickly purple glow spread across Kingler's body, indicating its poisoned state. Finish it with Hex. The same move to close the battle once more. It wasn't that Johan didn't want to use other moves. It's just that with Haunter mastering paralysis, poison, confusion, sleep, and flinch-inducing techniques, there wasn't a move more suitable than Hex. Caw-caw! Haunter stood triumphantly atop the unconscious Kingler, sticking out its tongue. Do you know the power of an ambush from behind? Boom! The number on the screen jumped from 1 to 2. The repeated noise drew even more attention. Caw-caw! I'll take on 10 of them. Steven, you're here too? Around the tower climb zone, more and more people gathered. Initially, they were merely onlookers, but as time passed, their reactions shifted from casual curiosity to shock, then to stunned silence. Roxanne, dressed in a maid outfit, and Flannery in a hip-hop outfit squeezed through the crowd and found Steven standing at the front. What's happening here? Flannery asked, looking around. Her gaze swept over the scene, taking note of the surprised expressions on the faces around her and the change of the number on the wall from 7 to 8. Finally, she focused on Johan and Haunter in the center of the stage. Professor Johan's ghastly evolved? Roxanne said in surprise. With his arms crossed and his chin resting on his fingers, Steven smiled slightly. He wasn't all that surprised. In his understanding, Professor Johan's tactical prowess was unmatched. Neither Lance nor the masked royal could match Johan's abilities. And tower climbing was an event that truly tested a trainer's strategic thinking, judging the situation, managing the Pokémon status, and achieving the most with the least effort. This suited Johan perfectly. Moreover, Haunter's evolution meant its strength had significantly increased. Steven's lack of surprise didn't mean others shared his sentiment. 8. Professor Johan has taken out 8 in a row. Flannery blurted out. To be more precise, Johan and Haunter had consecutively defeated 8 Pokémon together. Granted, these 8 Pokémon were all part of the Academy's training team and not perfectly synchronized with Isaiah's commands, but they were far from weak. Isaiah herself was known for being adept at leading Pokémon battles using random choices. On the battlefield, Johan looked at Haunter, who was laughing triumphantly, and asked, Haunter, how are you holding up? Ooh. The Alolan Vulpix in Johan's arms also glanced over with concern. Caca. Haunter licked its claws with confidence. This is my hunting hour. Ready or not, I'll keep going. Haunter's stamina seemed fine, and Johan could see from his visual interface that Haunter's overall condition wasn't bad. What Johan was really asking was whether Haunter had had enough fun. But clearly, Haunter wasn't satisfied yet. However, the Pokémon Isaiah sent out were getting stronger with each round. Caca. Bring on the next one. 9th Pokémon, Isaiah called out, holding a Pokeball. Despite being on the losing end, Isaiah showed no signs of frustration. As the overseer of the tower climb zone, she understood the importance of keeping her cool to ensure fairness. To be honest, she was also curious about how far Johan and Haunter could go. She could sense that while Haunter hadn't sustained any major injuries, the continuous use of moves and abilities had to be wearing on its stamina. Well, sort of. Haunter occasionally pulled a toxic orb from its mouth and licked it like a snack, as if tricking itself into feeling better. Go, Hypno! The next Pokémon that emerged from the flash of red light was a humanoid Pokémon with golden fur, a white ruff around its neck, and a small pendulum in its hand. Sorry. A psychic type and a master of hypnosis. Hypno! Upon entering the field, Hypno's eyes glowed with a deep blue hue and it locked its gaze onto Haunter. Caca! Haunter immediately folded its arms defensively and shivered in horror. "Professor, there's a perv on the loose," it seemed to say. Felt like it was being completely seen through. "Forewarn ability, huh?" Johan narrowed his eyes. "So, which move will you predict?" Normally, Forewarn identifies the move with the highest base power. But in reality, it likely focuses on the move most threatening to Hypno. This moment, Hypno was confused. The move it identified as the greatest threat was Lick. Isaiah was momentarily taken aback. However, the battle couldn't pause for surprises. After quickly recovering her composure, Isaiah called out, "Hypno, use hypnosis." "Sorry." Hypno's narrow eyes glinted slyly as it gently swayed its pendulum, sending ripples of hypnotic energy outward. "Haunter, hypnosis," Johan commanded in a calm tone. Haunter let out a sinister chuckle and waved its hands as its eyes began to glow. This was the secret code between Johan and Haunter. When Johan said, "Use hypnosis," Haunter would use the traditional move hypnosis. But when Johan said just hypnosis, kakakakakaka, challenging a hypnosis specialist at their own game? Many spectators were baffled by Johan's choice. Only Steven, who had witnessed Johan and Haunter's hypnotic prowess, kept a serious expression, waiting for the outcome. Isaiah didn't understand Johan's reasoning, but soon she sensed something unusual. "Huh?" Under her astonished gaze, Hypno's body wobbled slightly. Thud. Collapsed to the ground. "Whoa." The crowd collectively gasped, expressions of disbelief on their faces. What just happened? A Hypno, a Pokémon specialized in hypnosis, had been outmatched in its own domain by Haunter. If they hadn't seen Hypno fall with their own eyes and witnessed its body twitching, no one would have believed what they saw. "Caw-caw." Haunter yawned and patted its mouth, a tear forming at the corner of its eye. "Phew, that was close. I almost fell asleep myself." Then, Haunter smirked mischievously as it surveyed Hypno's body, its gaze finally landing on the hypnotic pendulum. "Caw-caw." "Ooh." The Alolan Vulpix's eyes sparkled. "Is this the fabled hypnosis technique of the House of Johan?" "What just happened, Professor Johan?" Someone in the audience couldn't hold back their curiosity and asked. Johan gave a straight-faced, confident explanation. Hypno's hypnosis is a wide-area effect, while Haunter's is a direct, focused one. Everyone nodded in understanding. Not. Boom. The number on the wall changed from 8 to 9. 9 down. Isaiah took a deep breath, recalling Hypno and preparing her next Pokémon. Then, the 10th one. A flash of red light was accompanied by a rumbling vibration in the ground. The large, blue-scaled Gyarados stood tall, its eyes wide with fury as it unleashed an ear-splitting roar. Roar! The water/flying-type Pokémon, Gyarados! Johan frowned slightly. In front of this massive creature, Haunter seemed quite small. "Caw-caws." "What are you roaring for?" "You startled me." Haunter slowly sank into the shadows. Facing such a behemoth head-on would be foolish. "Gyarados, use Dragon Dance." Isaiah commanded, initiating with Dragon Dance. Roar! Gyarados reared back, roaring as its power surged, whipping up small whirlwinds around the field with incredible speed. In such a whirlwind of chaos, even approaching Gyarados would be difficult. Toxic! Haunter sneaked up behind the twirling Gyarados and spewed out a glob of sticky purple sludge. Here it comes, Professor Johan's Subprotect Toxic strategy. Gyarados, use Aqua Tail and flush Haunter out of the shadows. Crash! Water swirled around Gyarados' tail like a mighty whip as it smashed down at the ground where Haunter's shadow lay. Boom! The ground exploded, water splashing everywhere, and Haunter was forced out, shattering a green protective barrier around it. She must be holding on to outrage to counter hypnosis. Johan thought. Crunch! Seeing Haunter revealed, Gyarados roared menacingly, slamming its tail down and charging at Haunter with terrifying speed. Boom! Its jaws clamped down on an illusion, a substitute. Asaya's eyes flashed. Dragon Dance! She had predicted the standard pattern of the sub-protect toxic strategy: protect, don't protect, then protect. But Johan had anticipated her prediction. Haunter Hex. Sometimes strategies as simple as sub-protect toxic required flexibility. Following a rigid routine would be akin to throwing the match. It had to be acknowledged that being able to see the opposing Pokémon's full move list and its proficiency level gave Johan a significant advantage. This final move solidified the victory. A few minutes later, boom! Gyarados' massive form wobbled, then collapsed heavily to the ground. Boom! The number on the wall changed from 9 to 10. Haunter pulled out a pair of sunglasses from nowhere and put them on. It raised its head proudly and scanned the crowd. Kaka! Omega! Who else wants some? Haunter had completed a streak of 10. Continue. Asaya glanced at Haunter, who was brimming with excitement, then turned her gaze to Johan. The Academy's tower climbing record was 12 levels. However, in recent years, no one had been able to reach or surpass the 10th level. Through all, the strength of the Pokémon sent out was adjusted according to the challenger's Pokémon, and the difficulty steadily increased. Achieving a high level wasn't something that could be done by simply bulldozing through with brute force. Moreover, the stronger the challenger's Pokémon, the harder it was to climb higher. Kaka! Haunter removed its sunglasses and nodded vigorously. Course, keep going. It wore an expression of, I'm feeling super brave. Not today, Johan replied with a smile, declining the offer. Kaka! Haunter looked at Johan, confused. What about our bond of trust? Johan glanced at Haunter with a hint of amusement. Weren't you just saying you wanted to eat a whole Tauros? Or would you prefer to head over to the Pokémon Center for dinner instead? Oh, right. Haunter quickly came to its senses, and in a flash it zipped back to Johan's side and gave him a solid lick with its tongue. Caw-caw! Johan still cares about me. Wait, where's my unfinished ice cream? Asaya and the surrounding students showed a bit of disappointment. They had hoped to witness Johan and Haunter create a new record. But Johan knew that breaking the 12-level record would be tough for Haunter in its current state. While Haunter seemed to breeze through earlier battles, that Hypno, if it had fought under normal conditions, would have given Haunter a significant challenge. And the Gyarados was an even greater threat, forcing Haunter to use its ace strategy, Sub-Protect Toxic. Although Haunter didn't get physically hit, the move substitute was a massive drain on its energy. Plus, Haunter currently lacked any self-recovery moves. With future opponents bound to grow even stronger, continuing the climb might lead to injuries. They had already earned the highest reward, so there was no need to push further. If Haunter could master a move like Dream Eater to sustain itself, it might have been a different story. In any case, quick-moving students had already uploaded videos of Johan and Haunter's 10-win streak to the campus forum. The videos stirred up quite the buzz. Within the walls of Rusboro Academy, an emerging fanbase had even formed without Johan realizing it. A group called the Grain Fan Club. Professor Johan, here's your prize. Asaya handed over a box with a smile. Inside was a set of elemental gems. Thank you. Caw-caw. Pokémon Center. Haunter squinted contentedly while receiving a quick recovery treatment from Nurse Joy and her Chansey. Its expression was cheeky enough to make both Nurse Joy and Chansey giggle. Devon and the others didn't follow along this time. Having witnessed Johan and Haunter's impressive streak, they were inspired to dive back into their own battles, ready to beat up some rookies. Johan felt a sense of relief seeing that Steven had been quite busy lately, presumably training hard or preparing for some competition. Opening the prize box, Johan found the elemental gems arranged neatly inside, with only the dragon gem and fairy gem missing. He casually picked up a fire gem. Too bad it's not a firestone, but it should still be worth quite a bit, right? He thought. If the reward had been a set of evolution stones, the Academy would have probably gone broke. Through all, each evolution stone costs millions, and a full set could likely feed Haunter for a long time. Wait a minute. Johan's thoughts came to a halt. Haunter had evolved, which meant its appetite and dietary quality requirements were bound to increase. A wave of pressure washed over Johan once more. He carefully put the gems away and rubbed his temples. I really need to keep earning money to support these two gluttons. Seems like I'll have to speed up my progress on learning how to make poke blocks. In truth, Johan had been learning how to make them for some time with Daisy's guidance, but he still didn't have a berry blender of his own. Constantly borrowing the school's equipment for practice wasn't a sustainable solution. And berry blenders weren't exactly cheap, definitely pricier than a coffee machine. If only there were more wealthy clients like that Evie Eats Cabbage lady. Johan sighed inwardly. Professor Johan, it's about time. Caw. Haunter got up and stretched, clearly enjoying the massage. It hadn't been injured, so all it needed was a simple recovery session, which didn't take long at all. Thanking Nurse Joy, Johan resumed exploring the academy grounds with Haunter and Alolan Vulpix. Haunter put its armor back on, and after showing off with Alolan Vulpix over their giant ice cream sundae, it all ended with click. Johan took a picture and uploaded it to his online profile, captioning it, Autumn Ice Treats. As Johan gained some notoriety online, he occasionally posted about daily life or shared tips about Pokémon. However, he rarely replied to comments, as he was swamped with questions from the online psychological consultation room. Later, Johan took Haunter and Alolan Vulpix out for Toro's barbecue. Then they enjoyed a Cantonian-style massage at the Mockamp Massage Parlor. They stopped at the Smeargle Photography Studio for some commemorative photos. Lastly, they watched an EV performance at the EV Performance Club, wrapping up the busy evening. Overall, this Academy Festival had been a lot of fun for them. When they got home, Haunter skillfully pulled out its phone and began watching the still-ongoing Bibarel Adventures series with Alolan Vulpix. Johan was pretty sure this show had no end in sight. A series with each episode being a standalone story? How could it possibly conclude? Meanwhile, Johan dealt with the soreness in his back, still bruised from the Mockamp massage. He added nutrients to the Pokémon egg incubator while browsing the latest news. Something interesting caught his eye. Lance vs. Lorelei, Dragons vs. Ice Showdown. The headline detailed the showdown between Lance and Lorelei, even mentioning a Lapras vs. Dragonite battle. The result ended with a forced 1-for-1 between the two Pokémon, almost a mirror of Johan's earlier battle with Professor Kukui. Man, Lance's Blaze Charizard is kinda broken. He can even one-shot a thick fat dugong. As he was reading, a friend request notification popped up on his phone. Forever 18. What should I do if my Pokémon is too self-absorbed? Forever 18? Johan raised an eyebrow. Anyone using a name like Forever 18 was almost certainly past that age. That was Johan's life experience. However, the person's question did seem related to Pokémon psychology, so he accepted the request. Grain in the field. Could you describe the details? Through all, confidence isn't necessarily a bad thing. Forever 18. What if they feel like they'll die if they don't look in the mirror every day, that kind of confidence? Johan ran his hand over his forehead. That felt like a personal attack. Person then sent a photo. It was a Smoochum staring at itself in a mirror, carefully applying lipstick. Smoochum, the Kiss Pokémon, is of the Ice and Psychic types. It resembles a small girl with golden hair, pink skin, large eyes, and its signature thick lips. Smoochum is naturally curious, and its lips are very sensitive. When it encounters something unfamiliar, it often uses its lips to touch and understand it first. Its lips are also used to remember things it likes and dislikes. To keep its lips moisturized, wild Smoochum regularly use tree sap as a lip balm. It's not surprising for a Smoochum to constantly check its lips, even after taking a fall. So, its fixation with mirrors isn't unusual. But if it truly feels like it would die without a mirror, that's no longer confidence, it's vanity. This wasn't strictly a psychological issue, somewhat similar to Evie Eats Cabbage's Phoeba. But while that Phoeba was excessively self-conscious, this Forever 18 smoochum is excessively vain. After giving it some thought, Johan offered his advice. Grain in the field. My suggestion is to intervene externally while also redirecting its focus, coupled with some hypnotic guidance. Forever 18, what specific method? Grain in the field. For example, you could hide all the mirrors. Or you could try taking away its mirror while it's using it and offer it something like a poke block to distract it. Forever 18, one moment. It wasn't long before the person sent over a video clip. In the video, Smoochum was happily looking in the mirror when suddenly a pale hand snatched it away. In the next instant, Smoochum burst into tears. Tears formed a small puddle on the ground, and Smoochum simply used the puddle as a mirror instead. As for the offered poke block, it didn't even spare a glance at it. Johan. He retracted his earlier judgment. This was indeed a psychological issue. Forever 18, so that's the situation. Johan felt a slight headache coming on. If a Pokémon was overly self-conscious, it could be helped by steadily boosting its confidence. But if a Pokémon was overly confident to the point of vanity, it couldn't be cured with a heavy-handed approach. Otherwise, it could backfire and lead to the opposite extreme, causing the Pokémon to spiral into deep self-doubt, which would be much harder to fix. Otherwise, simply showing Smoochum what it would look like after evolution could suffice. There was only one solution left. Johan sighed. He glanced at Alolan Vulpix, who was happily watching TV alongside Haunter. Well, you probably won't meet it anyway, he thought. He then sent over a picture of Alolan Vulpix sitting in an ice cream cup from the recent Academy Festival. Forever 18, so cute! Message retracted. Johan raised an eyebrow and pretended not to see that. Grain in the field. Show it this and let me know its reaction. Soon after, a new photo arrived. Smoochum was frozen in place, holding the tablet with a stunned expression. Johan let out a sigh of relief. Thankfully, Alolan Vulpix's cuteness worked like a charm. Forever 18, it looks a bit lost. Grain in the field. Are you a trainer? Forever 18, yes. Grain in the field. Then tell it that Alolan Vulpix trains hard and that a Pokémon who trains is the most beautiful. Forever 18, I'll try. Ding ding. Another picture arrived. This time, Smoochum was earnestly lifting a pair of tiny dumbbells. Seemed to be working at least a little. Grain in the field, this is just the first step. Keep a close eye on Smoochum's condition, and remember to praise it with words like strong, diligent, and hardworking are what make a Pokémon truly beautiful. If there's any more trouble, feel free to reach out. Confidence is a good thing, but if Smoochum becomes too fixated on its appearance, it could lead to a significant drop in self-esteem once it evolves. Of course, it's possible that even after evolving, it could remain confident in its appearance, but in a more delusional way. That's why it was necessary to shift its focus early on. Johan specifically asked if they were a trainer to gauge the best direction for this shift. If they only saw Smoochum as a pet, the focus wouldn't have been as effective. Forever 18, thank you. Sigh of relief emoji. Grain in the field, you're welcome. After that, Johan answered a few more messages. He set the incubator back in place, took a quick shower, and prepared to go to bed with Alolan Vulpix. Lately, he hadn't needed to help with sleep as much. Well, it's not like I can freeload every day. Sylph Academy, Giotto. Ha, little Smoochum working out? Is the sun rising in the west tomorrow? Karen pushed open the door and found Smoochum diligently lifting its small dumbbells, making little grunting noises. She looked utterly surprised. Lorelei adjusted her glasses and explained what she had consulted Johan about online earlier. Oh? Seems like our senior Johan really knows his stuff. They had felt a sense of familiarity with Johan, only to later discover that he had also attended Sylph Academy, even though they weren't in the same department. Technically, he was their senior. Karen, how do you think I should thank him? Lorelei asked. Karen understood this wasn't just about the smoochum matter. Lorelei had also gained insights from the parish song strategy. Just pay him, I guess. Karen shrugged. I heard our senior Johan used to work multiple part-time jobs. Lorelei frowned. It wasn't that she thought paying money was crude. She was just worried that giving him money might hurt his pride. You're overthinking things, Karen said, rolling her eyes. Then give him some training insights. He has an Alolan Vulpix, doesn't he? Since you're so good with ice types, give him some advice on raising them as a token of thanks. You think a trainer who can command a Lapras to use parish songs so adeptly needs my ice-type insights? Lorelei countered. True. Karen's eyes lit up mischievously. Didn't Lance meet him too? You could always ask Lance. Crack. Lorelei's tablet suddenly displayed a noticeable crack. After the festival, the Academy granted a short holiday break. Early in the morning, poverty drove Johan to wake up bright and early. Upon waking, he saw Haunter on the ceiling, rubbing its sleepy eyes and looking disappointed. Another failed attempt to lick Johan awake. Ooh! Alolan Vulpix stretched lazily, front and back legs extending in a long, luxurious stretch. Today, Johan planned to head to the electronics district, hoping to find a second-hand berry blender. He had already prepared a detailed guide for the outing. However, not long after getting out of bed, he heard a voice from downstairs. Hello, delivery for you. Please sign here. By the window, a Pidgeotto was preening its feathers while clutching a package. A delivery? Johan was puzzled. Package? Caw-caw. Haunter immediately floated over to the window, cupping its hands around its mouth like a megaphone and shouting at the delivery person below, almost giving the poor deliverman a heart attack. With Pidgeotto watching nervously, the package was handed over. When Johan saw the sender's name, he smiled. Lance. He recalled that last time when Drake sent a package, it arrived via Dragonite. But this time, Lance's package came through a Pidgeotto, even though it belonged to the delivery person. Somehow, Johan felt like this was a subtle omen of something. Caw-caw. Before the package was even opened, Haunter curiously stuck its head inside. Johan. Upon opening it, Johan found a TM, technical machine, and an invitation letter inside. He remembered that when the video of his battle with Lance had gone viral, Lance had mentioned compensating him with an item or a TM. Nasty plot. Seeing the move inscribed in the TM, Johan's eyes lit up. Nasty plot. Sharply boosts the user's special attack. This TM isn't cheap. Lance really went all out, or could it have been given by Agatha? Nasty plot is like Swords Dance, except it boosts special attack instead of physical attack. Moves that significantly boost stats like these are often more expensive than most high-power moves. Of course, they're also harder to learn. But both Haunter and Vulpix can learn Nasty Plot. This is what pleased Johan the most. Haunter is primarily a special attacker, and Vulpix's special attack stat is also relatively stronger than its physical attack. It's like getting 2 moves for the price of one. Absolute profit. Haunter, this challenging task is up to you. Johan handed the TM to Haunter with a serious expression and instructed it to learn the move together with Vulpix. Caw-caw. Haunter tilted its head. You're supposed to be naturally gifted, right? A move like this shouldn't be a problem for you, Johan said with a look of suspicion. Haunter immediately straightened up and pounded its chest in a show of confidence. Caw-caw. Easy. Just watch me. Taking the TM, Haunter turned away with slumped shoulders and sighed. Maintaining this genius persona is exhausting. Why did I ever pretend to be one? Hoo-woo. Vulpix tilted its head adorably, watching Haunter with wide eyes. Seeing Vulpix's innocent gaze, Haunter's spirits lifted. Floated down next to Vulpix and took a deep breath. All right, let's do this. Johan chuckled softly. This wasn't exactly him pressuring Haunter. It was more like Haunter had dug its own hole and Johan was just going along with it. He turned his attention to the invitation. When he opened it, he was surprised to find a ticket inside. A VIP ticket for the youth exhibition match? Johan couldn't help but be amused. Well, at least it's not an invitation to participate. In the Pokémon world, there are countless tournaments due to the prominence of Pokémon battles, and most of them are quite popular. From the Grand All-League Master Tournament to small-town baby cups, each has its own audience. Competitions can generally be divided into 3 types: exhibition matches, standard battles, and free-for-all matches. Among them, free-for-all matches are slowly phasing out as time goes on. Standard battles are the mainstream nowadays. For instance, the World Championships, Masters Points tournaments, Gym Leader Challenges, and Specialist battles all fall into this category. As for exhibition matches, as the name suggests, they're organized by inviting well-known competitors to participate. Winning or losing isn't important. The goal is to be entertaining and put on a good show. The matches neither affect scores nor rankings. Since when does Lance participate in exhibition matches? However, when Johan saw the sponsors listed, WoW, Sylph Company, Devon Corporation, Poke Time, and the Battle Company, the appearance fees for this must be astronomical. Typically, major companies sponsor exhibition matches to promote their new products. But for so many big corporations to join forces, it was clear that the league was planning something. The venue is Sitopolis City in Hoenn? Johan rubbed his chin, his mind spinning with several speculations. First, the league might be planning to formally introduce Pokémon contests to the stage. Second, his mind kept flashing back to an old, vague memory, a plan involving capturing Rayquaza. Forget it, it's not really my business anyway. Johan placed the invitation on his shelf. Whether or not he'd attend depended on his schedule. After packing up his things, Johan called Haunter and Vulpix and they left the house. They took a taxi to the largest electronics market in Rustboro City. The enormous shopping center housed every piece of equipment available in the Pokémon world, from phones, navigational devices, and Poketime watches to berry blenders and more. Inside, aside from the wide variety of merchandise, there were also electric-type Pokémon everywhere. There were Plusle and Minun running in hamster-like wheels, Elekid twirling their wired arms like power cords, and even an Ampharos holding a tub of popcorn, fixated on a TV drama. "Caca!" Haunter exclaimed. Spotted a cute Piku darting by and became excited. "Hoo!" Vulpix turned in the direction Haunter pointed, but the golden little creature had already disappeared. Johan led them to a specialized shop for berry blenders. Despite having done some research beforehand, seeing the price tags in person made him grimace. Most were tens of thousands of dollars at the minimum. "Hello, sir. How may I assist you today?" A saleswoman greeted him with a professional smile. "I'm looking for a second-hand berry blender," Johan replied. "Of course." The saleswoman didn't show any displeasure at his request for a second-hand machine. In fact, customers coming in to find second-hand blenders were quite common. "Please follow me." She led Johan to a storage room filled with various models of berry blenders, some visibly older and others relatively newer, with a wide range of prices. "If you don't mind me asking, are you a trainer?" she inquired. Sort of," Johan responded. "In that case, you might be interested in this." She handed him a flyer from a nearby shelf. "Caca!" Haunter took the flyer and handed it to Johan, peeking over his shoulder to read along. Sponsored by Rustboro Electronics Mall, the Elekid Cup Trainer Tournament. The prize is... Click. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. "Caca! A power outage?" But the saleswoman seemed unfazed. She called out, "Ampharos, if you would, please." "Bah!" With a soft hum and a red glow from its tail, Ampharos generated electricity, and the store's lights quickly came back on. Johan noticed that other stores were also quickly restoring power using their own electric-type Pokémon. So, the stores keep electric Pokémon for power outages? But the real question was, how does a major commercial district like Rustboro Mall lose power in the first place? Why does an electronics mall have power outages? Johan couldn't help but ask. Ah, well. The saleswoman sighed, casually waving her hand as if she had grown accustomed to it. This has been going on for quite a while. The power goes out every so often, and eventually we all just started bringing our electric-type Pokémon here to the mall. Has Officer Jenny looked into it? Officer Jenny is investigating, but it's not something that can be solved in a day or two. Boom. Before she could finish speaking, there was a loud bang outside, accompanied by the faint sight of flames. The sudden noise startled the saleswoman, and the ampheros generating electricity inside the store also flinched in fright. Caw-caw! Haunter floated in front of Johan, and in his arms, Vulpix trembled, grabbing tightly onto Johan's clothes. Does this kind of thing happen regularly too? Johan pointed towards the flames. The saleswoman swallowed nervously, losing her previous composure. Her voice faltered, and not usually, no. This is the first time. Boom! Another explosion echoed. The entire electronics mall faintly shook, and the floor beneath them seemed to tremble slightly. That was enough to snap the store employees and customers into action as they began to rush outside in a panic. The saleswoman, her ampheros, and Johan joined the escaping crowd. Fortunately, the explosion occurred outside the mall and didn't cause severe damage, but it did create quite a bit of fear. As Johan led Haunter and Vulpix out of the mall, he noticed that Officer Jenny and the Rustboro City Police were already on the scene, working to evacuate the area, manage traffic, and cordon off the explosion site. It's all right, Johan reassured Vulpix, gently stroking its back. Oh, Vulpix whimpered softly, but it was braver than before. Mr. Johan? Officer Jenny spotted Johan in the crowd, and her eyes brightened. Officer Jenny. Johan approached, knowing he couldn't just ignore the greeting. He was also curious about what was going on, so he asked. Officer Jenny had a serious expression. We're not entirely sure about the exact cause, but we suspect it might be related to the frequent power outages at the electronics mall. We actually brought in an expert today to try and figure out the cause of the power outages. But just as he arrived, this explosion happened. Johan nodded in understanding. No wonder Officer Jenny's team had arrived so quickly. It wasn't just because they were nearby. An expert? Watson from Mewtwo City. If it's about electricity and circuitry, no one in Hoenn could be more knowledgeable than Watson. It's caused by electrical current interference. A voice interrupted their conversation. Turning, Johan saw a young man with golden hair wearing a blue jacket. On his shoulder was a Pikachu, and the man himself seemed somewhat lethargic. Minato Namikaze? Johan's mind jumped, but he quickly corrected himself. No, Faulkner. This was Faulkner, the gym leader from Sunishore City in Sinnoh. Johan was genuinely surprised to run into Faulkner here in Rustboro City, Hoenn. Caw-caw! Seeing the Pikachu on Faulkner's shoulder, Haunter's eyes gleamed. It's Pikachu. A real-live Pikachu. Sensing Haunter's intense stare, Faulkner's Pikachu tensed up. Tiny arcs of electricity danced across its cheeks in response. Pikachu. What are you planning? Johan quickly pulled Haunter back behind him. At this point, Johan seriously considered cutting Haunter off from watching those idol shows. Being a fan comes at a high cost. Isn't Vulpix cute enough? Thankfully, Officer Jenny began to introduce them to each other. Allow me to introduce. Faulkner, this is Mr. Johan, a Pokémon psychologist. Faulkner's eyes lingered on Johan for a moment. That name sounds vaguely familiar, Faulkner thought. And this is Mr. Faulkner, the gym leader from Sunishore City in Sinnoh. Originally, Officer Jenny's team had planned to reach out to Watson from Mewtwo City, but when they couldn't get a hold of him, they ended up contacting Faulkner, who happened to be in Mewtwo City. After learning of the situation, Faulkner agreed to come and help out. Johan suddenly remembered. Watson was busy with the modernization of New Mauville, wasn't he? Watson was working on modernizing New Mauville, and for some of the changes, he had consulted with Faulkner. After all, as the Lightning of Sunnyshore, Faulkner was likely involved in the full-scale electrification of Sunnyshore City as well. After brief introductions, Officer Jenny turned to Faulkner. Mr. Faulkner, you mentioned that the explosion was caused by electrical current interference? Yes, Faulkner replied, sounding a bit drained. However, when discussing anything related to electricity and technology, he seemed to regain some energy. I took a quick look. The explosion came from one of the circuit boxes in the area, and there are clear signs of electrical current interference. As he spoke, he furrowed his brow. Rustboro City's electrical grid isn't that old, and the established circuits shouldn't suddenly fail like this. Furthermore, the conflicting electrical currents seemed more like those produced by electric-type Pokémon. Electric-type Pokémon? Officer Jenny repeated in surprise. Faulkner nodded. He then began explaining in technical terms about using electric Pokémon for generating and conducting electricity. Neither Officer Jenny nor Johan fully understood everything. In summary, regular Pokémon wouldn't be able to release such a large amount of electricity all at once. After all, there are so many electric-type Pokémon in the world. If any random one could wreck a city's power grid, things would be in chaos. That's why urban circuits and circuit boxes are specially treated and shouldn't be damaged so easily. Of course, electric-type Pokémon like Electivire, which can supply an entire building's electricity for a year, aren't part of that consideration. Moreover, for an Electabuzz to evolve into Electivire, it needs an Electorizer and a trait evolution to trigger the transformation. So far, there haven't been any cases of wild Electivire. What if an electric Pokémon was storing electricity for days or even longer? Johan asked. Faulkner looked thoughtful. In that case, it could be possible. However, Pokémon with that kind of storage capacity are quite rare. Johan and Officer Jenny exchanged glances. They shared the same suspicion. A rampaging electric-type Pokémon. However, they couldn't be sure yet. If it were a rampaging Pokémon, it would probably have caused a bigger scene by now. For now, let's restore power here, Johan suggested, and Officer Jenny agreed. She couldn't help but think to herself, if Ash were here, he could at least act as a resistor. This will take some time, Faulkner said, retrieving equipment from Officer Jenny's police car. He and Pikachu then headed towards the circuit box where the explosion had been. Watching Faulkner's back, Johan rubbed his chin. Has Faulkner already grown tired of battles? Nearing midday outside the electronics mall in a nearby restaurant. If there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave, the restaurant owner said, rubbing his hands nervously and forcing a smile. Officer Jenny nodded. Thank you. Bang. Before she could finish speaking, the restaurant owner had already slid the door shut and made a quick exit. Although Faulkner was already fixing the power box, no one knew if another explosion might occur or how powerful it might be. If not for Officer Jenny's request, the owner would have been long gone. Vulpix, would you mind? Johan asked, smiling as he handed a cup to the Pokémon. Ooh. With a gentle breath from the little fox, the drink instantly turned ice cold. Great job, Johan praised, lightly patting its head. Ooh. Vulpix let out a soft, pleased cry, its 6 tails swaying gently, clearly enjoying the compliment. Seeing this, Officer Jenny and the nearby officers began placing their own cups in front of the little fox. Hoo. Vulpix hesitated and moved closer to Johan, seeking comfort. Helping others is a joy, Johan encouraged with a smile. After a brief moment of hesitation, Vulpix stepped forward and blew on each cup, turning every drink into a chilled delight. Logically, I get it, but it's just so cute. Thank you, little Vulpix. You're amazing. Hearing all the praise, Vulpix ducked its head shyly, but its tails wagged even more vigorously. Mr. Johan, Vulpix is getting more lively by the day, Officer Jenny noted with a smile. Johan nodded warmly. As he made regular visits to the Rustboro police station, Officer Jenny had witnessed the gradual change in Vulpix over time. For Vulpix, learning to control its cold breath and turn drinks into iced ones was not just training its power but also its confidence, helping it face more unfamiliar people and bask in well-deserved praise. Meanwhile, Faulkner's Pikachu held a plug in its paws, its cheeks sparking gently to keep the rice cooker running. Haunter floated over stealthily, offering a mago berry. Caw, hungry? Pikachu glanced at the berry and turned its head aside. Pika, you shouldn't eat food from strangers. Caw. Really? Haunter took out some poke blocks. Pika. Unless you can't resist. Pikachu grabbed the poke block from Haunter and gobbled it down in one bite. Pikachu! Haunter chuckled mischievously. It had learned a thing or two about winning others over with food from Johan. With the ice broken, Haunter felt more confident continuing the conversation. Caw. Pika. Caca. Pika. For Pokémon, beyond discussing their daily meals, the most significant topic was often their trainers. Haunter, of course, couldn't stop singing Johan's praises, talking about his top-notch skills in psychology. He was one of a kind. Well, except for those odd browsing histories that showed up on his phone now and then. Pikachu wasn't one to be outdone. It declared that Faulkner was the best trainer ever, great at battles and an amazing inventor. But even Pikachu admitted it didn't understand everything that showed up on his devices sometimes. As the conversation progressed, Pikachu's ears drooped. Over the past few years, Faulkner's enthusiasm for battling had waned. No, it wasn't just waning. He seemed to have developed an aversion to it. For Pikachu, a Pokémon that loved battling, this was tough to adjust to. Caw, that's a problem that needs fixing. Haunter rubbed its chin thoughtfully. Pika? A problem? How do we fix it? Hearing the word problem made Pikachu nervous. Haunter turned to glance at Johan. Pikachu followed its gaze. Him? Haunter gave a sly grin and patted Pikachu on the shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry. Friend discount. Swish. The sliding door opened and Faulkner, hands in his pockets, walked in carrying his tools. Pika. Pikachu jumped up onto his shoulder. Mr. Faulkner? Officer Jenny asked as she stood up. Faulkner raised an eyebrow and spoke lazily. It's stable for now, but the converter is missing a part. You'll need to replace it with a new one later. Understood. Officer Jenny nodded. After they all sat down, with Pikachu's efforts, the rice was finally cooked and they began to eat. During the meal, Faulkner spoke up again. It's likely the work of an electric-type Pokémon. I found bite marks on some of the wires. That's what we suspected, Officer Jenny said, sneaking a glance at Johan. She added, I've already informed my colleagues back at the station and they're searching the area. Faulkner simply nodded and continued eating. Caw. After the meal, Haunter discreetly tugged on Johan's sleeve and led him aside to explain what had transpired with Pikachu. You're serious? Caw. You didn't make any weird requests like licking it? I have to remind you, Faulkner's Pikachu is male. Caw. Hashtag, do I look like that kind of ghost? Haunter seemed genuinely offended. Johan glanced over at Faulkner, meeting Pikachu's gaze. Blinked at him and Haunter with a knowing look. Johan sighed, feeling a headache coming on. He's a Pokémon psychologist, not a psychologist for humans. How can you compare a person's complex mind to a Pokémon's simple one? And yet, why was a Pokémon seeking psychological help for its own trainer? More importantly, why was this client brought in by his own Pokémon? Johan decided to just let things unfold naturally. We're almost there. Officer Jenny parked the car near a public park. They noticed an open manhole cover by the roadside, with burn marks surrounding it. Pika! Pikachu, sitting on Faulkner's shoulder, perked up. It looked toward a wooded area in the park and let out a warning cry. Electricity crackled faintly across its cheeks. Suddenly, amidst a harsh buzzing sound, a bolt of golden electricity shot out from the woods. Without hesitation, Faulkner tossed out a pokeball. In a flash of red light, a Luxray, with a body covered in black and blue fur resembling that of a full-grown lion, appeared in front of the incoming lightning bolt. Luxray, use Thunder Fang, Faulkner commanded. Boom! In an instant, the electric energy exploded, scattering currents that seared a nearby tree, leaving charred marks. Oh, whoa! Luxray assumed an aggressive stance, its fur bristling with electricity. Faulkner frowned. He couldn't see their opponent, but Luxray, with its X-ray vision, had already locked onto its target. After a moment's hesitation, Faulkner gave the command, Luxray, use Thunderbolt! Oh, whoa! Electricity surged around Luxray's body, and a bright golden arc shot toward the trees. Yet surprisingly, there was no reaction, as if the attack had vanished into thin air. Furrowing his brows deeper, Faulkner wasn't satisfied with the result. Pikachu, Luxray, use Thunderbolt again. Pikachu leapt from his shoulder. Pikachu! Oh, whoa! Two bolts of lightning, like twin golden serpents, struck into the trees with astonishing speed. But once again, there was no response at all. What was going on? Even if the opponent was strong, there should have been some reaction. Meanwhile, in Johan's field of vision, a Pokédex entry had appeared, revealing the opponent's identity. His expression became slightly strange, and a serious look appeared in his eyes. Seemed like this incident might be connected to Vulpix as well, because the opponent turned out to be a Vikavolt with 4 Charjabug. Johan stepped forward, surprising Faulkner. I'll take care of this. Haunter. Caw-caw. Haunter chuckled mischievously as it silently faded into the shadows. The dense forest, with its many patches of darkness, provided plenty of places for it to move freely. Boom! Suddenly, amidst an eruption of electricity, a Pokémon resembling a stag beetle with a pair of massive mandibles proportionate to its body, flew out of the dense foliage. Its wings, thin and transparent like those of a cicada, buzzed as it skillfully navigated through the forest. A Vikavolt? Faulkner and Officer Jenny were both caught off guard at the sight of this Pokémon. Isn't that an Alolan Pokémon? Jenny muttered. As they watched, Vikavolt's abdomen began to glow with a golden current, which quickly gathered between its large mandibles and turned into a powerful stream of electricity, aimed right at Haunter hiding within the forest. Caw-caw! Startled, Haunter dived back into the shadows of the trees. Boom! The powerful electric blast struck the ground, creating a sizable crater and leaving nearby tree trunks and leaves charred from the scorching electricity. This Vikavolt seems to be larger than most, remarked Faulkner with a serious expression. Being an expert in electric-type Pokémon, he could gauge the power behind Vikavolt's previous discharge attack. Is it frenzied? Murmured Officer Jenny. Faulkner glanced over with a puzzled expression. Frenzied? Not entirely, Johan interjected, shaking his head without elaborating for Faulkner. Instead, he pointed to Vikavolt's legs and asked, Did you see what it's carrying? Charjabug. Following Johan's gaze as the golden sparks faded, Faulkner's eyes widened in realization. 4 of them. Charjabug, an electric and bug-type Pokémon, looks like a small green rectangle. On closer inspection, one can see that it actually has jointed legs, tiny mandibles, and beady eyes. Charjabug is an apt name because it essentially acts as a mobile battery capable of storing and providing electricity for other Pokémon like Vikavolt. The occasional blackouts at the Electronics Mall, as well as Luxray and Pikachu's ineffective attacks earlier, were likely the result of these Charjabug. In reality, Vikavolt is the evolved form of Charjabug. Many wild Vikavolt carry at least 1 Charjabug with them, both for recharging and to protect the weaker Pokémon. But this Vikavolt had 4 Charjabug. This wasn't just a matter of having more power. It was due to Charjabug's ability battery, which increases the power of a partner's special moves by 1.3 times. With 4 Charjabug, Even if it wasn't clear whether the effects of battery could stack, it was obvious that this Vikavolt not only had ample power reserves but was also a force of destruction. "They're not behaving normally," Faulkner said, his voice heavy with concern. Being an expert on electric Pokémon, he could sense that something was off with both Vikavolt and the Charjabug. "Is this the frenzy you were talking about?" he asked, recalling what Officer Jenny had mentioned earlier. At the same time, Haunter and Vikavolt's battle was already underway. Despite having the support of 4 Charjabug and possessing high special attack power by nature, Vikavolt's weaknesses were quite apparent. It lacked speed. While Vikavolt seemed agile in the forest, its speed was still a major shortcoming, especially now that it was burdened by 4 Charjabug. Haunter used Toxic. Johan's calm voice carried into the forest. "Caw-caw." Moving from shadow to shadow, Haunter suddenly appeared behind Vikavolt, letting out a mischievous laugh before spewing a sticky, deep purple substance onto the larger insect. Bzzz. Vikavolt's wings began to hum rapidly as electricity poured from the Charjabug into its body, enveloping it in a golden aura. In the next moment, crackle! The air erupted as electricity, like waves, spread violently outward from Vikavolt. Johan's brows furrowed. He called out, "Dodge, Haunter!" "Then use hypnosis." Caw-caw! Frightened by the overwhelming display of electricity, Haunter dove behind a nearby tree. The wild electrical outburst didn't just damage the trees, it even sparked small fires. Will Vikavolt even be susceptible to hypnosis in its current state? That charge of electricity, even if it doesn't create an official electric terrain, seems to be producing a similar effect. Faulkner muttered, puzzled. But Officer Jenny reassured him, "Mr. Johan's hypnosis is different." "Different? Is that so?" Pikachu's sensitive ears picked up on Alolan Vulpix's soft murmur. "It's Johan's special hypnosis." Caw-caw! Haunter emerged from the shadows again, this time directly in front of Vikavolt, with a menacing grin on its face. It released its grip, allowing a small hypnosis ring to drop from its paw. Johan, Officer Jenny, and Faulkner all stared in bewilderment. As the hypnosis ring swung back and forth, Haunter's eyes gleamed with a red glow and invisible waves of psychic energy radiated outwards. Vikavolt's body began to flicker like a faulty light. Thunk! One of the Charjabug fell off its legs. Soon after, the other 3 Charjabug followed suit, dropping to the ground one by one. Without the extra power supply, Vikavolt's golden glow dimmed significantly. Hex! Haunter took advantage of Vikavolt's confusion, thrusting its hands forward as dark energy surged from its claws, burrowing into Vikavolt's body. Chka! The sharp pain snapped Vikavolt out of its stupor, but with the potent toxic already taking effect, it quickly began to feel weak. Till it fired off a desperate thunderbolt. But it struck Haunter's protect instead. Use hypnosis again. With the Charjabug removed, Vikavolt couldn't maintain the pseudo-electric field effect. Its reduced strength and dwindling stamina made it vulnerable. Caw-caw! Haunter continued to sway its hypnosis ring, and when Vikavolt's gaze met its own, a wave of drowsiness crashed through the larger insect's mind. Its wing movements slowed, and the flickering electric currents gradually faded. In the end, Vikavolt wobbled before collapsing heavily onto the ground. Seeing this, Officer Jenny gestured to her officers, and they quickly moved in to put out the fires, capture the Pokémon, and secure the area. Caw-caw! Haunter floated out from the woods, patting its chest in a show of mock relief. That was terrifying for a ghost. "I remember now," Faulkner suddenly spoke up, breaking the silence. He was looking at Johan with a glint of recognition in his eyes. "You're the Mr. Johan that Aaron mentioned, the one who taught him the toxic stall strategy and defeated Lance." "Aaron? Learning toxic stall?" Johan was momentarily taken aback as the image of Aaron, a fiery and passionate trainer, came to mind. Why would he want to learn toxic stall when he's got the strongest friendship combo? Flint was one of Faulkner's closest friends, specializing in training fire-type Pokémon. He's also destined to be one of the Elite Four members in the Sinnoh region, with his signature Pokémon being an Infernape. He's the quintessential emotion-based trainer, an example of those classic commands that the original author researched, like stand up or hang in there or quick dodge it. The kind of emotional coaching that tends to spur Pokémon into action. It's essentially like Ash's style in Sinnoh. Trainers of this kind, once they ignite, especially when Infernape's Blaze ability activates, can nearly defeat even the likes of Cynthia's team, requiring her Garchomp to step in and barely secure a victory. For such trainers, learning a toxic stall strategy would be akin to dropping gold to pick up bronze. It would be like Johan teaching Steven tactics for Skarmory but not showing Lance sophisticated strategies, because it simply doesn't suit their styles. It's not that Steven lacks a close bond with his Pokémon, but rather each trainer has their own personality. Steven can occasionally burn with intensity, but it's not his primary mode. On the other hand, Lance's Pokémon in essence wouldn't suit such sophisticated strategies. If Lance could just fully grasp his Viridian Force, that would be more than sophisticated enough. In Pokémon Adventures, we see how Lance, the Dragon-type champion, ended up losing to Green's Rattata and Caterpie due to the power of the Viridian Force. That's a testament to its value. Next time we're back at the Academy, return it. Johan scolded Haunter off to the side. The Hypnosis ring isn't like the teeth of Pokémon like Seviper or Golbat that grow back once pulled. Caw. Haunter drooped its head, still toying with the Hypnosis ring. Found the thing quite handy. Seeing Haunter like this, Johan sighed internally. It's never easy. Mr. Johan, Officer Jenny approached with a serious expression. Haunter, take Vulpix and go play over there, Johan instructed, knowing what Officer Jenny was about to discuss but not forgetting the last time with the Academy's Passimian incident. He warned, don't cause trouble. Caw. Haunter, still mourning the loss of its Hypnosis ring, nodded absent-mindedly. Once the two Pokémon moved a bit further away, Officer Jenny spoke up. About the matter you asked me to investigate regarding Alolan Pokémon, there was a lead initially, but now it seems like it needs to be merged with the Pokémon Frenzy incident case. The Vikavolt and the 4 Charjabug did show signs of losing control or going berserk, but they were somewhat different from the earlier Pokémon Johan had encountered. Their loss of control wasn't as severe. Johan speculated that it was probably due to the shared burden among the 5 Pokémon. So, Johan asked, you were right about it involving Pokémon poachers and smuggling, Officer Jenny revealed. Johan frowned at this news. Pokémon poachers are ruthless individuals who capture and sell Pokémon indiscriminately. One poacher he particularly recalled was Hunter J. It was during an encounter with a poacher that Flint and Faulkner went from being rivals to best friends, teaming up to fend off the poacher only to get beaten up in the process, and that's how they formed a bond. Now, with this connection to Pokémon poachers alongside the frenzy incidents, it seemed this wasn't a matter for just a mere Academy teacher to handle alone. Still, poachers who catch Pokémon from Alola and smuggle them to the Hoenn region aren't exactly common, are they? Johan inquired. Officer Jenny nodded. Indeed. Plus, the unprovoked frenzies among Pokémon are the 2 major angles we're focusing on. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, Johan stated earnestly. Since this involved Vulpix, he had no choice but to get involved. Of course. We may need your help once these Vikavolt and Charjabug regain consciousness. Meanwhile, Faulkner, with Pikachu and Luxray by his side, stood with his hands in his pockets, watching Johan and Officer Jenny converse. He could tell that Haunter wasn't necessarily stronger than Luxray or Pikachu, possibly even weaker. The reason Luxray's and Pikachu's attacks failed was purely due to Vikavolt siphoning off the electricity through its 4 Charjabug batteries. But this wasn't of much concern to Faulkner. The issue was resolved, and that was what mattered. He recalled Luxray and turned to leave. Pika. Pikachu softly whimpered on his shoulder, a hint of sadness in its eyes. Johan had noticed Faulkner's departure but didn't stop him. 1, there wasn't a good reason to. 2, he couldn't think of an immediate solution to Faulkner's problem. Faulkner's growing distaste for battles stemmed from constantly having to face trainers challenging the Sunny Shore gym, all of whom were overconfident in their words but lacking in skill. Honestly, if you constantly had to deal with keyboard warriors in person, anyone would get fed up, let alone Faulkner, who aspired to challenge the Elite Four. Over time, the frustration from dealing with these keyboard warriors evolved into a frustration with battles altogether. Eventually, he simply began handing out gym badges without battles. He figured it was better to spend his time working on engineering projects. In the original story, it took both Flint and Ash, two equally emotional trainers, to rekindle Faulkner's fighting spirit, and Ash's use of Pikachu resonated with Faulkner and brought him back to the thrill of battling. But where was Johan going to find two passionate trainers? And preferably ones who owned Pikachu? It was quite a headache for him. Unless I just hit him hard enough to force a recovery through sheer adversity, Johan thought grimly. Please leave it here. Thank you very much. A Machhoke carried a large box into Johan's house, and with Johan and Haunter's guidance, set it down in a cleared area. After gently placing the box down, the Machhoke even helped unwrap the packaging, revealing a professional-grade berry blender machine. Thanks for your help, Johan said, handing over 2 poke blocks. Choke, Machhoke grunted, shaking its head to indicate that it couldn't accept food from customers due to professional standards. It then pulled out a card reader from the belt around its waist. Cash or card? Johan chuckled awkwardly and pulled out his card. The Machhoke completed the transaction skillfully, even tidying up the discarded cardboard and taking the trash away. Haunter looked on with a twitching brow. See? That's professionalism. But soon enough, all attention returned to the shiny, human-sized berry blender. Originally, Johan had planned to purchase a second-hand one, but due to the Vikavolt incident, the electronics mall's owner gave him and Faulkner discount vouchers as thanks. Faulkner tossed his away, uninterested in mass-market machinery. Kachu picked it up and handed it to Haunter. Haunter then passed it to Johan, calling it compensation. Johan couldn't refuse, as Faulkner was already gone. With gritted teeth, Johan ended up buying a brand-new berry blender. Owu! Vulpix sat in front of the massive blender, mouth agape, astonished at the big contraption. Johan read the manual while taking out a selection of pre-prepared berries. Operating the berry blender wasn't too difficult. The actual process of making poke blocks wasn't complicated either. What mattered most was the correct balance of ingredients and blending time. It would be challenging to figure this out from scratch, but if given a recipe, it would be much easier. Soon enough, the big guy began to hum and blend smoothly, impressing Johan with its high-end quality and minimal noise, ensuring it wouldn't disturb the neighbors. After roughly half an hour, brightly colored, crystal-like poke blocks began to emerge. These were Pinap poke blocks, made primarily from Pinap berries. Their main effect was to replenish a Pokémon's stamina while providing essential nutrients for daily needs. Haunter impatiently wrapped its tongue around one and popped it into its mouth, closing its eyes to savor the taste. Vulpix, too, cautiously picked up a warm poke block and took a small nibble. 2 Pokémon exchanged glances. Caw. Uwu. Is it really that good? Seeing their expressions, Johan was genuinely surprised at his first attempt. Could I be a natural at making poke blocks? He casually picked one up and tossed it into his mouth. A second later, his face flushed red. Puffed. Shortly after, both Haunter and Vulpix spit theirs out as well. The room was filled with the sounds of blah blah blah. Johan felt utterly defeated inside. It's over. Vulpix has been completely led astray by Haunter. You two troublemakers. Caw. Oh. For a moment, the room was filled with laughter and joy. Night had fallen. Johan sat cross-legged in front of the berry blender, holding a notebook in his hand. Beside him were several plates of poke blocks, though none of them seemed quite right in terms of taste. Logically, there shouldn't be anything too wrong, Johan murmured. Except for the blender speed being a bit hard to control. But a minor difference like that shouldn't matter, right? After all, the berry blender in reality wasn't as difficult to operate as the one in the games. The more expensive the machine, the more automated it became. The real key lay in the recipe. But he had followed the recipes given by his teacher, Ms. Ayako, who specialized in nurturing Pokémon. Let's try one more time. Refusing to admit defeat, Johan once again put some pinnap berries and additional ingredients into the blender. Seeing this, Haunter silently hid in the ceiling while Vulpix scurried under the coffee table. They had tried so many times already, and although the taste was improving each time, it was still... The gentle hum of the machine soon signaled the completion of another batch of poke blocks. "Haunter, Vulpix," Johan called out, holding a tray of the newly made poke blocks. He glanced around his small home. "Come on, I can see you two hiding," he chuckled. "Caw-caw. Owu." One from above and one from below. Two Pokémon reluctantly emerged from their hiding places. "Try it. I think I've got the hang of it this time," Johan said seriously. Two Pokémon hesitantly glanced at the new poke blocks. Indeed, they did look a bit more crystalline than before. Before they could react, Johan handed them each a piece. "Caw-caw." Haunter looked at the poke block in its hand, swallowing nervously. "Why aren't you eating it?" "I'm human. I can't just take your food," Johan replied confidently. "But you ate one just now." "Come on, just try it," he urged. Haunter and Vulpix exchanged a glance. The two of them closed their eyes, looking as if they were about to face their doom, making Johan's eye twitch in frustration. Finally, they both took a bite. Slowly. "Caca. Equals. Woo, asterisk. What kind of reaction is that?" Johan asked suspiciously. The next moment, Haunter leaped toward him and Vulpix jumped into his lap. "Wait. Let me try it," Johan exclaimed, realizing something was up. He quickly picked up a piece and tossed it into his mouth. As he bit down, the poke block burst open in his mouth like a sweet, tangy jelly with a subtle aftertaste. It was like a taste of that nostalgic summer. In the end, Johan, Haunter, and Vulpix sat around the coffee table, with one last poke block in the tray between them. "Caw-caw." Haunter cast Johan a side glance. "Didn't you say you wouldn't steal our food? Now you want this last one? What kind of trainer are you?" Johan didn't change his expression. "As a trainer, isn't it normal to taste test a poke block? I've eaten plenty of citrus berries, haven't I?" "Owu." Vulpix let out a small whimper. What did you all see in that moment? "Caw-caw." "A bidoof." Johan noticed the puzzled expressions on Haunter and Vulpix's faces and cleared his throat. "Never mind. You wouldn't know them." They both looked at Vulpix. The little Pokémon slowly lowered its head. "Owu. I saw my mother." Hearing this, both Johan and Haunter went silent. They pushed the tray toward Vulpix. "Yum." Without hesitation, Vulpix gobbled it up, flashing a cunning smile. "But I have you guys now," Vulpix thought, feeling warm inside. The small, sly fox was finally showing its mischievous side, thanks to Johan and Haunter's influence. "Now that we've succeeded," Johan stood up, "let's make another batch." If one batch was successful, that meant the recipe wasn't the issue. It was probably just that the timing of his preparations was slightly off, causing the taste to vary significantly. That's a relief. Although this venture had cost a lot of money up front, if he could master the art of making poke blocks, the expenses of feeding Haunter and Vulpix in the future would be much more manageable. Not to mention, there was still that unhatched Pokémon egg. If it ended up being a big eater like Aaron or Larvitar, Johan's entire savings might not be enough to keep it fed. If only it were a cater pie. Actually, a grub bin wouldn't be bad either. Once it evolves into Charge-a-Bug, I'd never have to pay an electricity bill again. And if it's a mill tank, I'd never have to worry about them being malnourished. Caw-caw. On the sofa, Haunter was intensely studying the TM for Nasty Plot, with a notebook beside it. It was a set of notes Johan had copied from Champion Agatha's Essence of Fear book, containing tips on mastering Nasty Plot. Uwu. Vulpix was perched on the back of the sofa, its tiny face showing the same seriousness and focus. Two Pokémon exchanged occasional whispers. If someone weren't listening carefully, they might have thought they were actually discussing strategies. Kaka, what do you think breakfast will be tomorrow? Pooh, it won't be scrambled eggs. We had those today. Kaka, do you think it might be Lopunny meat pies and Eevee mashed potatoes? Feels like it's been a while since we had those. Oh, I like Eevee mashed potatoes. Meanwhile, Johan was absorbed in a different matter, focused on making poke blocks. He had captured Vulpix some time ago. Despite being timid and lacking confidence due to its past, the little Pokémon was much stronger than it realized and possessed a hidden resilience. Never skip training. If Vulpix wanted to pursue battles, Johan was more than happy to nurture it in that direction. However, this presented a problem. How should Vulpix approach its first battle? The first battle needed to boost its confidence but shouldn't be too easy, or it might feel like its opponent was holding back. Beep beep. Johan's phone buzzed. He picked it up, only to realize he had grabbed Haunter's phone by mistake. Since both phones were bought using reimbursement claims, they were nearly identical. The only way to tell them apart was by checking which one was covered in Haunter's saliva. Haunter's phone was filled with saved dramas, especially the popular adventures of Bidoof, which even Vulpix had become addicted to. Wait. Bidoof's incubation and egg groups. Haunter's egg groups. You little rascal. Johan shot a look at Haunter. Clueless Haunter smiled back, baring its fangs. Kaka. Seriously? You're already thinking this far ahead. Johan facepalmed. Is something wrong with my Pokémon? He muttered. After some consideration, he decided to respect Haunter's privacy. I'll just pretend I didn't see that. At least its preferences are normal. Feeling mentally drained, Johan picked up his own phone. It was a message from the long-absent He Eats Cabbage.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.